What's up, guys? Welcome to the movie discussion, Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. I'm Cole, joined by Jay, and we're here for our 99th episode, where as we inch ever closer to the amazing milestone that is 100, the century mark. This is the 99th episode, and for tonight we are going back to another sci-fi movie. I know we did one not too long ago in 12 Monkeys, and this is Tom Cruise, who what did we do with Tom Cruise in this? We did a Tom Cruise movie not too long ago, too, wasn't we? I feel like we did, but maybe it was longer ago than I thought. Anyway, so keeping you in suspense, this is Minority Report from 2002. So sometime late in 2001, Tom Cruise wrapped shooting on the magnum opus that was Mission Impossible 2. He was able to cut his luxurious long hair that he had for that movie and get himself ready for this movie. And of course, this is a big Spielberg movie, and this is, I think, the third Spielberg movie we've done on here.
Yeah.
Or maybe no, it's the fourth. It's the fourth Spielberg movie, because we did the first one we did was the one I never shut up about and I was champing at the bit to do, which was Empire of the Sun. We did Empire of the Sun because we think it's a really good movie that's kind of overlooked in his oeuvre. We also did AI, which is one of the more divisive movies in his career, where there's a whole different set of opinions on that. Some people think it's actually really overlooked and really good. Some people think it kind of deserved the fate it got, where it didn't do so well at the box office. And so we talked about that. And then we did one of his most clear-cut failures not too long ago, 1941, early in his career. So this is our fourth Spielberg movie, and it's sort of the most mainstream of those four. It was certainly a successful movie and a big deal, but we still think it has enough elements that make it sort of unique and interesting to make it worthy of discussion on this show. And of course, it's another sci-fi movie based on a short story by the great sci-fi writer Phillip K. Dick. Iconic stories that would often turn into some very good movies, most notably probably Blade Runner, which came from the Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. What was it? Total Recall, which is from the short story We Can Remember For You Wholesale, and of course there were others. Actually, in early versions of this script, it was supposed to be some sort of sequel to Total Recall, although I don't really know why, because the short stories themselves were not related, but apparently that was the original intent, going to be some sort of sequel. And this is a movie, so as early as 1992, this movie was in various stages of incubating, I guess, because it was before production. And it was also known that even fairly early on, Spielberg wanted Tom Cruise, because I guess there were a few times where he and Cruise were almost going to work together, and then they didn't because of various projects they had going on. They made friends on the set of Risky Business. I don't know who directed that, but I guess Spielberg was around for that. Spielberg was actually originally going to be the director of Rain Man, but then he couldn't because he was doing the greatest movie of all time, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That was 1989. So, yeah. Yes, Joe Bob, we were talking about it. It's getting quite out of hand, but I can handle it. I think all these people that have fairly short hair and they haven't had their hair cut in a few weeks, they're all bitching and moaning. They don't know they don't have to knock it out of their face every 5 seconds. So what do they know? Anyway, I'll remain professional and get through this. I guess this is a collector's item now, this shirt.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sell it on eBay.
Oh yeah.
Make a ton of money. This being a classic shirt.
This was really a great time for Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah.
Early 2000s. I know you don't like Vanilla Sky, but
no, I don't.
You said Magnolia was 89, was 99, Mission Impossible 2, Vanilla Sky, Minority Report, Last Samurai, Collateral, War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible 3. So, that's solid years right there.
Very successful. I don't think all those movies were good. I really hate Vanilla Sky. I think most people think that Mission Impossible 2 is ridiculous and not very good, but it did well.
That's the Chinese director, right? Did that one?
Oh yeah, that's John Woo.
John Woo, yeah.
John Woo.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of part 2.
Yeah, it's usually considered the worst of the series by people that are fans of the series. It's really over the top and silly. I mean, it's over top and silly in a way I can enjoy because I like John Woo so much. But yeah, there's a lot of dumb stuff going on in it. It's funny because it's the one that really changed the direction of the series. Like the first Mission Impossible was an action movie, but it wasn't like, it was more kind of like a spy thriller type thing. And it's really Mission Impossible 2 that turned the franchise into like the massive like action franchise that it is to this day. And Last Samurai is interesting because it ties into something I want to talk about later that's unrelated to this episode, but I think we can just fit in because it's something I've been thinking about lately. But for all the flack that movie gets, I actually enjoy it quite a bit, even though there's a lot of reasons for me not to. And of course, the one that I dislike, but he got a lot of like critical acclaim for was what was the one you said, Collateral. Like people were like, "Damn, Collateral's good," and what a performance by Tom Cruise! Like that was one of the ones where like people were finally seeing him as like he wasn't just playing Tom Cruise, he was putting on a real performance. And I don't think it's a bad movie. I just don't really like anything about it. It doesn't recommend itself to me in any way. I watched it once, shrugged, and never bothered with it again. But I can remember there was quite a lot of I guess overwhelming sort of positive response to that, and it converted a lot of people too that previously had not liked Tom Cruise. Like that movie kind of changed their opinion on him. So yeah, it was a great time. This is just before Tom Cruise goes totally insane. Right. Sometime around 2005, 2006, Tom Cruise ego overtakes him entirely. Plus, things probably with his wackadoodle church have really come to a head too. And yeah, Tom Cruise. And he stayed in that for about 10 years. He's only really come out of it in the last year or two, really. Like he's still Tom Cruise, he's still nuts and stuff, but he has like toned it down. But there was a period like 2005 through at least 2012 or so where like every other day people were talking about like nutty behavior Tom Cruise was doing. He was getting really weird and standoffish with everybody. He's attacking Matt Lauer. He's jumping on couches. So yeah. So this is before that. This is where he's still box office star Tom Cruise, but at the time doesn't necessarily have a reputation for being a lunatic.
Did you ever see Edge of Tomorrow?
I've started to watch it. I'm going to watch it. I've heard that's quite good.
It's one I like a lot. It's kind of unfortunate it wasn't very big, hit. It's the one where they changed the title for the video release.
Yeah. It was like Live, Die, Repeat.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. For a while, I thought there were two separate movies.
Mm-hmm. As you would, they're two separate titles.
I'll say this about Tom Cruise. I've seen a lot of his stuff in theater, including this movie. I saw this movie in theater.
Yeah, me too.
I'd love this movie to get re-released in theater. Actually, this movie is a really great movie for the big screen. This is a movie we both like.
It's kind of grown on me a little bit over the years. I didn't really care for it to begin with.
Oh, really?
It was, but yeah, it's a very particular film. I like the way it manages to capture that. It's the pristine future, and then you also get to go see the gritty, nasty, like when he gets his eye transplant, how nasty that place is.
Right. So we talk a lot about like Cyberpunk, and it's something our favorite. This is technically not Cyberpunk. This is kind of what is sometimes known as post-Cyberpunk, and probably more popular known as tech noir. So the difference there is, of course, how Cyberpunk came along. It was sort of like a rejection of like the utopian movies that we'd seen in the 50s and 60s. And the whole point is eventually you get to a point of diminishing returns on the Cyberpunk where everything's so messed up. Like it's like, we'll step back from that and show a future that's, not a crap sack world, at least not entirely. And that's kind of where you get a post-Cyberpunk or tech noir type movie like this. Because this movie shows us a future society, but one of the things that like Spielberg was really attentive to was that he got even various scientists and people that worked in technology to consult with him because he said, I want to as realistically as we can make it. There's a movie set in 2054, like so that's roughly 50 years from now. It's 2002 or 2001 or whatever. What do you think realistically we can do? Of course, we can't be perfect. We're not going to be able to do everything. But he really wanted to get like a more realistic, toned down idea of that. And you see that in the movie. And some of the stuff that's in the movie we see in our society now in 2020 or the last few years, which is kind of cool. But so yeah, it's not the overdone Cyberpunk, totally oppressive crapsack world, but it has at least hints of it. actually, just jumping ahead here, it's funny. You're thinking, hey, this is a fairly pristine world and things are going all right. It's not like we're seeing a bunch of like ghettos and stuff that you see in something like a Blade Runner. I guess and the government's not too oppressive, but then you have that scene when they're hunting for him and they go into the apartment complex and they release the spider things.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, this is total cyberpunk nightmare shit. Because you have these like spiders that's like, yes, we're looking for criminals. We have every right to unleash these spiders into your homes, and they'll crawl on your faces to like verify who you are.
Lift up your eyelids.
Yeah, so that's the point of the movie where you do see at least parts of the more oppressive cyberpunk-esque stuff. But yeah, I just said it does stand out from the crowd because we got into a point where so many movies were just sort of ripping off Blade Runner over and over again. It's like, finally, this is something that stands apart from that and is unique and has a really great look, which we'll talk about. You know, it's funny because I'll often talk about, and I'm not the only person, but I mean, a lot of people talk about how, like, in the 21st century, so many movies have a color, like, washed right out of them, and it looks weird and bad. This movie does that too, but in a different way, and it really fits. It really makes it seem like an old black and white noir, except you still do have color. Like, it's a really good effect. I had it queued up here before about, like, what they used for it, but, because they, you know, obviously they use some sort of technique that would desaturate the colors, giving it sort of the washed out look. But it's not exactly just a washed out look because there's still something that's sort of vivid about it, and that's what I really like. Because we see lots of movies that have like sort of a dull, washed out look to them, but that's it. This manages to have that, but still have the way they use light and shadow is still somewhat vivid, which I'm sure was entirely on purpose because again they're trying to evoke noir, and lighting is one of the biggest things you do in noir, right? Is trying to show off the contrast between light and shadow, and this movie does a really great job of that. And yet I haven't seen too many other movies that look this way. Like there must be other movies that use the same visual technique, but I don't know. But I'm a really big fan of it. It's one of the things I really like about it.
Like washed out color.
Yeah, but it can't just be washed out color on its own because there's a lot of movies, as I said, over the last 20 years that do that, and to me it just looks dull and bad, and you're just like, where's the color? You know, even when they're going for it on purpose, I think sometimes they overdo it. I mean, you see, look at something like The Matrix. Kind of started a bit because The Matrix, everything had that sort of green tinge to it. And then you would just see so many movies that would just either have like a green tinge or a blue tinge. Like you watch the Underworld series. I get it. Underworld is dark and stuff, but it's just like, oh, there's no color at all. It also spilled over in a weird way into other things because, like, if you watch something, say, like, if you watch like an American movie or television show, and they want to like have like locations maybe in the Middle East, they'll do this weird thing where they put everything through a gross yellow filter. Like you really see it in something like Homeland, where you're just like, okay, anytime we're over like in, you know, Pakistan or wherever, like apparently everybody just lives in a cloud of yellow vapor. There's no blue skies. There's no actual sunlight. You know, it's bad, but it's very popular, and it still shows up in shows and movies to this day, even though it's not realistic. But yeah, so I'm usually not a fan of the muting of colors and washing them out, but I like how they do it in this movie. I think it really fits, and as we said, it really sells the noir side of tech noir. This movie has a real noir feel to it, not just visually too, and like narratively too, which is cool. That was something Phillip K. Dick himself. I mean, as much as this movie differs, you know, there's a lot more added to it than the short story. They add a lot on, but still, coming from the core of the story, Phillip K. Dick, if you read his stuff, he had a very good sort of noir sensibilities that run through a lot of his stuff. You know, the Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is probably the ultimate example, but there's still other ones, like even something like The Man in the High Castle, which itself was made into a show, although, again, big, huge changes from the original novel. But yeah, there's a whole thing where, yeah, in 1999, Spielberg invited various experts to do a 3-day think tank. And it's basically he wanted them to, like, as realistic as they could, like, come up with sort of a plausible future for, like, 50 years in the future. Because they didn't want this to be sort of like an out there type sci-fi. They wanted to make it as grounded and realistic as possible. Which, again, it gives it sort of a unique look and a unique feel when you're comparing it to other sci-fi movies. So yeah, you got like an architect, you got Oh, he even got Douglas Coupland in there. That's interesting. Canadian author. The man who coined the term Generation X. I've got like so many Douglas Coupland books, and there's like at least 4 or 5 that I still haven't read, and I've bought them like years and years ago. He's one of those authors I've sort of shunted to the side. Really good author, but anyway.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is really interesting, and almost like we can see a lot of it, like you said, being used. Our current technology, like a lot of the touchscreen stuff, when he's looking at
Right.
the
Right.
cognitions, the precognitions or whatever.
We're all like touching screens and swiping.
The only thing that doesn't make sense to me is the balls. Like, why the wooden balls?
It is really odd, isn't it?
I mean, just because it looks cool, it's got to be it, right?
Yeah, and they're actually wooden balls. You see, like how the machine like makes them.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just so that way they can put the name on it easily. But I was gonna say, no, I mean plastic or something would do the same thing. Like, why would?
He may have actually said in there at one point. I think it was so like it couldn't be tampered with or something, or it couldn't be.
Yeah, maybe
someone couldn't, write a name down that's not right or whatever.
Yeah. So we'll start with the opening because the opening's great. The first 14 minutes of this movie is a really great sequence, and it's really unique in cinema, and it's unique to Spielberg's career. All the technical stuff that's going on here, and it's a great introduction because it totally explains how this technology works and how it is applied to this world. We have the very first of the time we get to see of how like this whole PreCrime thing works. And you see and we get to see stuff happening in real time, but we also get to see the visions that the Precogs are having, and we get to see that replayed in front of Tom Cruise and the other pre-crime unit people. We've got stuff sometimes running in reverse. It's really technically must have been a very difficult thing to film, to put all this together, because you have a lot of balls in the air, not to use the balls metaphor. But I just mean there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's all really important to get it across well so the audience can understand. And I just think it's really great technically. It's really well done, because when that 14 minutes is up, you understand perfectly, if you paid attention, how this stuff works and how it's applied in this world. And yeah, it's really cool. I really like it.
Yeah, it's probably one of the best parts of the film is the intro.
Yeah, because it's a really complex. There's a lot going on, and it's again using sort of different. It's using different special effects. It's using different camera techniques. Even something like more simple, like a camera angle, like even that gets played up. Because sometimes they're trying to switch a point of view. They'll go from like the visions the precogs are seeing, and then show us what's actually happening in real time. They do a good job of like I'm struggling with how to explain it, but I just mean they do a good job of conveying it in a way that it's disorienting, but disorienting in a way you can follow. Like you're not like, oh, I'm lost. Like, what the fuck's going on here? And I can't think of a better way to say that, but that's kind of what I mean, is that they get across that this is sort of a disorienting, complicated thing, but they get across in a way that you can understand, and I really like that. So it's some pretty slick filmmaking there that I like. Sorry, just looking at here, trying to find something that I lost. I always have like tabs and stuff open to like some useful information, and then I lose it. But yeah, I mean, if anybody needs to know, like this is set in 2054, kind of a 5 minutes into the future type movie, a little more like 10 minutes, I guess, because there is some fairly advanced stuff, but again, not as advanced as we see in other things. And the big deal here is this whole concept of pre-crime, the idea that they've got these special human beings that have precognitive abilities, and they keep them in a tank, and somehow hooked up with the machines and stuff, they can actually are able to see visions of people that are committing crimes. And at first, they kind of, some of it is just like, I guess for the point services of plot, they'll just explain it very quickly because it's just like, well, exactly how far does this extend? Like, how do the crimes? And they say something like murder always like rises to the top because murder is like the most emotional. So they can't see everything. They can't see necessarily a robbery or, I guess something less violent. And what's weird too is they even say something like how they can't see rapes. But then when you watch there's a promotional video early in the movie where one of the women says, like, I was going to be raped. So it seems to me that they can see rapes, or maybe it was a rape that was going to end in a murder. I don't know. I guess I'm just getting overly technical there. But they do make a point of just saying that, like, certain crimes, like, they I guess they're not powerful enough to register. And they also do say some things that do make sense to me. Like, for instance, like the murder that we see, or the murder that's supposed to happen that gets prevented, is an obvious crime of passion. And they do explain, like, crimes, like, that's the only time people do attempted murder now, really, is crimes of passion, because, like, they've realized that, like, premeditated is really not going to work. So it's like nobody tries to murder anybody anymore unless, like, it's just like a spur of the moment decision, crime of passion type thing, which is what happens here, where a man leaving for work comes back to find that his wife is cheating on him. You gotta love that wife. She woke up horny, I guess. She's talking to him and asking about what his day's going to be, and she's also like coaching the kid because the kid's about to go off to school and he has some tests, and it's like, okay, as soon as they're out the door, it's like 8 a.m, here comes this guy so they can jump in bed and have sex. And I'm sure that reflects real life. I'm sure there's lots of affairs that work exactly like this, but it's still kind of amusing for me to see. Like, what's this other guy's day like? Because you see him, like, standing in the park across from the house just waiting for the husband to leave. It's like, time to get my morning adultery on.
Well, before that, they talk about how crime had risen to such a astronomical rate before the pre-crime came into play, and then
And there's a few different movies that do that sort of thing too before they throw the gimmick at you. Kind of most recently, maybe The Purge, right? It's like, in America, murder has gotten so out of hand, but now we come up with this radical thing and it fixes it, So this is before The Purge, and this is a much different take. But yeah, it's the same sort of setup, right? It's like murder and violence is out of control in this country. We need some sort of gimmick or future technology to handle it. And of course, the thing here, what's going on here, and this is one of my questions about the movie. The point of the movie is, it's been implemented only in sort of a small area. Like, it's like Washington, D.C. and around there. It's like the District of Columbia, right? And the whole point is they want to maybe go national with it. And that's why Colin Farrell's character is there. He's there. He's sent from the Department of Defense or something like that, or Department of Justice. Yeah, I think it's the Department of Justice. And he's going to, like, audit the program and see it. Like, my question is, let's say the events of the movie don't happen and everything goes off great. And they're like, pre-crime is great, it works. Let's do it nationwide. Could those 3 precogs handle it, or do they have more? Because there's no way those 3 precogs could handle, like, a country of, well, like, right now there's over 300 million people in the U.S., so it'll probably be about 400 million people by the time this movie is, like, 2050 or whatever, right? So it's just like, they must have more precogs waiting in the wings or something. Like, I don't remember if that's explained or not, because there's no way those 3 can do the whole goddamn country.
Just give them some more of that white protein juice to soak in.
Right.
And they'll be all right.
So, of course, the movie has various themes running through it. The most obvious is, like, free will versus determinism or predestination or like that. And the other one, of course, is, like, the ethics of what they're doing. Because even if it does work, where does it stand ethically? You are sort of taking people's choices away from them, and also what you're doing to the precogs. Like, and of course, they lie to the public about what the precogs' lives are like, right? There's a part where you see, like, a tour group coming through, and the tour guide says something like how great precogs' lives are. And he's probably not lying. He probably is just repeating what he's been told. Like, I'm sure it's a closely guarded secret that they're just kept in this tank all the time, and they don't really have lives at all. And they're always, like, on crazy drugs, so it's like they're sedated for, like, their whole existence. Can you imagine what their existence would be like, just lying in a tub, barely aware of anything, and you just always have visions of, like, murder and violence?
So 2 twins and then Agatha, right?
Yeah.
Dashel and Doyle or whatever, and then Agatha.
Yeah, 2 males and a female, and it's understood that Agatha is maybe a little more talented than the other 2. And the whole thing is assessed as something like it takes all 3 of them because they all have to like see it and agree. And one of the big and what's funny is because it winds up like not mattering. It's kind of like the whole title is kind of like a red herring, really, because the movie's called Minority Report. Well, what is a Minority Report? We find out after Tom Cruise takes off and he tracks down the creator or whatever the technology. She says. There are instances where sometimes when they have visions where they don't all see exactly the same thing. They don't agree. But usually, it's just 1 out of the 3 that see something, it's 2 to 1. So we call the other one a Minority Report, and we usually disregard it. And that's sort of, it seems like the crux of the movie, right? Like it blows Tom Cruise's mind, or John Anderton, as it's pointed out there. Not Anderson, Anderton. And like he says, like, whoa, Jesus, why wasn't I told about this? It's like, because, the whole integrity of the program could come apart if people knew about it. And so he becomes convinced that there must be a Minority Report that would exonerate him. Because what's happening here is like one day he's doing his thing and a possible murder's coming through, and then he sees himself murdering a man he's never even met, and he has to go on the run. And he, of course, can't fathom how he could come to murder this guy. He doesn't even know who he is. So he's thinking, oh, somebody's setting me up. So when he finds out about the whole Minority Report thing, he thinks, this will exonerate me. And as the movie goes on, we find out there is no Minority Report that exists for Anderton's case. So, it's a good plot. It keeps you guessing. That's, I guess, the main thing I like about it is, like, it keeps you guessing. It keeps you watching. That's what you need from any movie, right? You have to actually feel invested and want to know what's going to happen next. And, I think this movie does a really good job of that. It has just enough sort of twists and turns. And, it interspaces the action scenes, so we have some quiet moments of investigation, and they're chasing him in the action, done pretty well, following the beats pretty well. So, yeah, good storytelling all around. I really I like the approach.
Yeah, and then Colin Farrell comes in there and is immediately the bad guy.
Right, and he when he thinks that he's being set up, that's the first person he thinks of. He thinks, this guy's setting me up.
Right.
Which is kind of weird, because it's like, well, if you follow that line of logic, what do you think this guy's end game is? Because the whole point is Tom Cruise at the start of this movie is 100% believes in this. The pre-crime, and, this is the answer. This is making a better world. And the whole point of Colin Farrell's character is he's the kind of skeptical. They have to sell him on this. So I'm just wondering, well, okay, if you think this guy's setting you up, why? It's because he wants to sabotage the program? Well, I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah, and plus, Max von Sydow is always going to be the bad guy.
Yeah, that's the eventual reveal. Although, like you said, maybe if you're a savvy enough movie fan, you can figure, okay, he's going to be the bad guy. Because that's what revealed, is that he's behind everything.
Yeah, something's going on, So, come to find out that it's missing Agatha's vision, right? The death of Anne Lively.
Right. So, yeah, the weird thing is when he's going to find his own Minority Report, he winds up instead, because he kidnaps Agatha, and he gets her hooked up to some weird illegal text so she can show her stuff. And then he doesn't find anything about his own Minority Report because there isn't one, but instead she broadcasts the murder of this woman, and he has no idea why, right? And that turns out to be what the whole plot actually hinges on, is the murder of this woman. But at the time, he has no idea who it is or what it's supposed to mean.
Right.
But
she actually showed that to him also when, Colin Farrell's character demanded to go in there and see the precogs.
Yeah, they see it early, and don't they just dismiss it and be like, that's just like a blip or something?
They call it a echo, I believe is what they call it. That's how he did it. He made it look like an echo, but it actually was a completely different killing. That's how he was able to
that's how he pulled it off. Max von Sydow's character needs to murder her, so he hires some guy to try to murder her. They come in and stop it. And then as soon as they're gone, which is weird because usually I think when people try to kill somebody, the cops would actually probably take you down to the station. Instead, they just all leave. which seems kind of weird. If I have to nitpick, it seems kind of weird that these guys, the PreCrime division, they are cops. They come in, they stop a murder, they arrest the would-be murderer, and then they just say bye-bye and leave the would-be victim there. And then she's immediately killed by Maximum Sydow, who puts on the same clothes and murders her in the same way. That way, so that when the Precogs sees that murder, they just say, oh, well, that's an echo of the thing we stopped, and that's how he gets away with it. So that's one of the reasons why we see that there is a big flaw in this system. If people understand how the system works, they can, figure out ways to get around it.
Was there ever any indication that was their mother? For some reason, I always thought that was their mother.
It's Agathas Mother, yeah.
Agatha's okay, yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing was he had to. The mother was like some sort of drug addict, and she initially like sold Agatha, but then after like a few years or something, she'd gotten her life a little bit back together and sobered up a bit, and she wanted her back, and that's why he killed her. So yeah, she was Agatha's mother. Because they do say that there are other precogs, and that there's a whole thing. Because when Tom Cruise is talking to the woman at the greenhouse, she talks about like how like so many of them just like burn out and die or something. So I guess that does suggest if they did decide to take the program national, they did have other ones ready. Because I can't imagine they could rely on just 3 of them for the entire freaking country. But if there was a line of dialogue talking about what the plan exactly would have been, I must have missed it or forgotten it.
I don't know that it ever said.
Because all they're just saying is like, we're going to show the world that this works.
But yeah, just that whole setup is really interesting. The whole concept that they've got all these prisoners that never actually committed a crime,
right?
And they're like in some sort of state of unconsciousness.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff. Again, a lot of ethical stuff comes into this, right? Like again, what's the price we want to pay for a war without murder? Are we taking away people's free will? And is it really right to put like people in a prison like that? And even if it is, and that's the other thing. Let's say it's actually like not even that bad to like put them in weird pods and sedate them and stuff like that. Doesn't that kind of ruin it too, though? Because the whole point in our society of putting people in prison is supposed to serve more than one purpose. If people commit crimes, we put them in prison to restrict them so they can't commit more crimes. But it's also supposed to be a punishment.
Or rehabilitation.
And right, and in some cases, rehabilitation is possible or a goal. They serve time. Hopefully, we get them better. They can go back into society, and they won't. What's the word? Recidivism. They won't reoffend. This is just like we take them and we put them into a weird dream state and forget about them.
But I mean, can't like crimes of passion basically happen to anyone? Say like you're not a violent person, normally you wouldn't ever commit a crime like this, but
right. I mean, that's what we see right at the start with the husband, right? He's probably an ordinary guy that's never really done anything, but he sees this horrible thing and it makes him snap. And he's protesting like, I didn't do anything, although I mean he was. I mean they caught him like mid swing when he was trying to stab his wife. But that's the weird thing, though. Nobody gets charged with attempted murder. They all get charged with murder. Because attempted murder exists right now in our society. Sometimes people try to kill people, and they're unsuccessful.
Right.
And then they get arrested for that, and the charge is attempted murder. And in a way, they're a bit lucky, because if they got caught for murder, it'd be worse. Attempted murder is a lesser charge than murder, which is weird, because the intent is still there. But in any case, they don't charge people in this world with attempted murder. They charge them with murder. And I mean, Tom Cruise makes his own little argument about that when he's talking to, or Anderson, we'll try to use the words, when he's talking, no, actually I can't, because I can't remember, because I cannot remember Colin Farrell's name. Let's bring up the names here. Colin Farrell is Widower. So Widower. So when Widower is having this little discussion about free will and, whether or not they would do it, Tom Cruise. So now I'm doing it. Okay. Anderton takes one of the balls, right, and rolls it down the table. And before it falls and hits the floor, Widower catches it. And he said, like, why did you catch it? And he's like, because it was going to fall. He's like, well, there you go. It didn't fall. Just because you stopped it didn't mean it wasn't going to happen. That's his argument. which is, I think, kind of easy to pick apart because
So,
that deals with the forces like gravity, right? Gravity happens. It's definitely going to hit the floor unless you catch it. That's a law of physics. That's gravity, which is not the same as a law of somebody's intent or feelings, right? But Tom Cruise, Anderton believes in this so strongly, he just makes the false equivalency, right?
it's a good analogy if you don't factor in free will, you know?
Right. And that's, again, one of the main themes running through this movie. And we come out on that side where, of course, the whole thing is now the whole setup, right? We might as well jump ahead to what Anderton has been supposedly set up to kill. Well, by the time he meets the man, he does intend to kill him because he believes, okay, so like a lot of characters in these movies, Anderton has a somewhat tragic backstory.
That's what I was about to bring up. Yeah, we forgot to mention that.
Right, so he was married and had a young son, and one day his son disappeared, presumably abducted, probably dead. And it broke down his marriage, and he's separated. And now he lives alone, and he's on weird drugs, and just constantly trying to relive the memory of his son. And that's another reason why he seems to believe so strongly in this PreCrime thing. It's just like, I want to keep that kind of thing from happening again, which I think is kind of weird because, again, based on what we've been told, this wouldn't necessarily stop kidnappings. But maybe, again, if his son was like eventually murdered by the person that kidnapped him, then they could find him that way. So I don't know. But we never actually do find out what happened to the son.
That's why he's so determined at his job, because it's basically motivated by this son's death.
Right. So when we get down to it, he is now on the run with Agatha, and he tells Agatha, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to kill this guy. I know the visions show me killing this guy, but I don't even know who he is, so why on earth would I kill him? But of course, once he finds him, the evidence is there to suggest that this is the man that did abduct his son, and the guy himself says, oh, I did kill him. And that's what it all comes down. Here's the free will thing, and he's pointing the gun, and she says to him, don't, you still have a choice. And he chooses not to, and which is good because that leads to the truth that this man is not actually the person that abducted his son. This is all a setup. That he was paid to, say that to goad him into the murder. The whole point was if he kills you, then your family will be taken care of financially. Some poor desperate guy. So, but yeah, that's sort of the crux right there is the whole thing about choice. She's saying to him, you've seen everything, and now you've seen everything, and or you think you know who he is, and now you fully intend to kill this guy. Oh, but still, it's not, the future's not written. You can still choose.
What was the purpose of the setup to begin with? Like, why was he set up to, why was he on the ball killing this guy?
Oh, you mean why set up Tom Cruise at all?
Right.
Right. It's because he thinks he's going to find out about because of that blip, I guess.
Really?
About Agathas Mother, which is weird because it's like, how fast did he throw together this plan? Right? Because this seems like something, if you're going to take this guy and hire him and get the photos and everything and make a setup.
So the images that we're looking at of him shooting this guy they're not real. So where did they come from? I mean, they don't happen. So
yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how exactly they show it because the guy still does get shot and does fall out the window.
Right.
Except he does it to himself. It's possible that sometimes there are breaks. Like one thing we've seen in this is it doesn't show it all smoothly in one sequence. Because we see Tom Cruise standing, pointing the gun at him, and saying he's going to kill him, but then we don't necessarily see him pulling the trigger. We just see the next shot of the guy falling out, being shot. So I guess that leaves enough doubt there.
I gotcha.
Because what does happen is he still does get shot, and he still does fall out the window to his death. The difference now is that he grabbed the gun and turned it on himself, or he grabbed the gun and sort of squeezed it to make Tom. I don't even know. Maybe Tom Cruise still does technically shoot him. It's hard to tell. They have a struggle. The gun goes off. He dies. But the difference is Tom Cruise did not purposely shoot him. This time maybe he accidentally shoots him.
I know what it was.
The guy might have grabbed his hand and squeezed the trigger or whatever, right?
You know what it was?
The result is still the same.
When Agatha showed him the vision of Anne Lively, that's when he went and started researching it, right? And he found the guy that apparently killed Anne Lively, Then he went to his boss, Max von Sydow or whatever, and told him about the whole thing. And he was like, "It doesn't make sense."
Yeah, that's
That's
why.
when he got set up, right? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Makes sense now. Because I was like, why would you just set up like the one guy that's like the most determined in the whole?
That really believes in it. He's practically the face of it, right? But yeah, it's funny because even like I got like on Wikipedia up here, on the plot doesn't even put that in the right place. So at the point you're just like, wait a second, like it doesn't even mention that part. It's just like it just jumps over it. It just goes to Precogs generated new predictions stating Anderson will murder a man he does not know named Leo Crow in 36 hours and all that stuff. Like that all is just written right here without saying anything about the whole thing about the drowning death. It's too bad about that clunky part because here's something we see a lot in movies too, where you have the bad guy talking to somebody who doesn't know they're the bad guy, and then they wind up saying like a detail because there's that whole thing, right? Like toward where they've come in and they've arrested Anderton. It looks like Max von Sydow's totally gotten away with everything, and he's talking to Anderton's ex-wife, and she says something about how Anderton had talked to her about this woman getting murdered, and he's just like, well, I'll try to look into it about her drowning, and then she's like, I never said she drowned. Like that's in a lot of movies, where they let too much slip.
It caught you in your lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in some good movies too, like Primal Fear, right? Like right at the end of Primal Fear, the whole freak out in the court, and it looks like, oh, okay, and then he's just like, tell her, ask her if her neck's okay. It's like, wait a minute, you always said you didn't remember stuff when you blacked out. And it's like, well, you figured it out, and he gives the big speech, but pretty good. But that's one of my favorite examples of it. So I'm not saying it's like a cheap thing to do. I'm just saying it shows up in quite a few things. Where the villain pulls everything off perfectly, but then they just let one little bit slip, and it's enough for the person they're talking to put things together.
And she goes to break him out of jail with his eyes, I guess. Apparently, he still has access to the deepest, darkest things, even though he's a convicted felon at this point.
Yeah, it's weird. Things seem to move so quickly in this world, but they forgot to revoke his access after they went on a big manhunt for him. They forgot that. But that's the other thing. Speaking of the eyes, that'll go back to Spielberg. Like this is fairly gruesome territory for Spielberg. That whole thing about what's his name, Peter Stormare or whatever his name is, taking his eyes out, who's made his entire career being an awkward creep.
He is so crazy in this movie. He's what I remember about this movie the most. Because he's got he needs to blow his nose the entire time, and he keeps slurping that up, and he says quack quack a lot and stuff, and just he's really, really odd guy.
The weirdest thing about Peter Stormare is he always plays a character with an accent no one can place. Peter Stormare is Swedish. But I've heard plenty of Swedish accents. What part of Sweden is Peter Stormare from? Because he sounds so weird compared to so many Swedish people I've heard talk. And I've heard quite a few. I watch hockey. A lot of Swedish players. Some of them have almost no accent. Peter Stormare's accent is bonkers to me. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I was just thinking about that because I played through Until Dawn not too long ago. And he's the psychiatrist in that. Man, he sounds so...
I forgot about that, yeah.
Yeah. Again, he's weird and off-putting, and that's what he's been doing his whole career. You're the weird, off-putting guy that makes everybody uncomfortable. It's like, okay, and in this one, you're like a weird black market doctor that takes people's eyes out. Perfect. But yeah, that whole sequence are Anderton wakes up, but he still has the bandages over, so he can't see, and he's in that house of horrors. That's like some horror movie shit right there. He's stumbling around. And he wants to have some food, so he opens up the fridge, which is full of disgusting, rotted food, and he takes a big bite of a black sandwich, and then he chugs down some horrible expired, who knows what it is, some sort of milk or something. That's stuff straight. That's right out of a horror movie, man. It's done really well.
Yeah, you're right. That is kind of different lane for Spielberg to go in.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing he's done that was that gruesome was probably so over the top that it didn't really register, which is like Temple of Doom, right, where they're ripping people's hearts out.
Yeah, that's true. PG-13 hard rip.
Yeah, but in this, it's much more visceral and much more, uncomfortable. Just like this movie has like a few seconds of sex. There's not much sex in Spielberg movies. Because the big joke, of course, in that scene it's the scene where the pre-crime division has actually found him in the building, but he's after, and they release the spiders, right? And then we have that cool scene where the camera roves over, going from apartment to apartment, showing the different people having the things, and they do show two people having sex very briefly, and they stop, of course, because the things come. And then soon after that, you have the older couple arguing in the kitchen with each other. And then they stop, the things crawl off their faces, leave, and then they immediately resume arguing. I get how that's the joke, right? Like this horrible, nightmarish, dystopian world thing happens to them, but they go right back to arguing. I get why that's funny, but I would have preferred just to see the couple having sex just immediately resume sex afterwards, because I think that would be funnier. That they're still just totally in the mood. I'm not going to waste this boner.
Yeah. I'm still in the mood.
Yeah, and as far as we know, maybe they did. The camera pans away. Like, I remember waiting for that moment. It's like, are they going to go right back to it? But the camera just pans away. And I'm sure, like, it's the realistic thing would be like, no, they're probably going to stop at least for a while. But I just think it would have been funny if they just got right back to business. I think that would have been the funnier joke than the older couple arguing. But anyway, not important.
And that's where he has to hide in that bathwater, right? In the bathtub.
Yeah, and I forgot about that too, because at first I just thought, all right, well, he doesn't have the eyes, so he's invisible to them. But it's actually, he's still not invisible to them. They still trace, like, the body heat, right? So that's what they're looking for. So he just happens, I guess it makes sense in that chamber of horrors that there'd be like a bathtub full of ice water for him to submerge himself in. But even with his temperature lowered, they still find him, but the whole thing is he has new eyes now, so it's different eyes, and they leave. It's crazy, too, like, the measures these things have, like, they don't give up. They, like, to get him out of the water, they send, like, an electrical charge into the water. And when they're going back to the lobby, they're saying, what's going on here? Like, it's probably some drunk that they can't wake up. So you can imagine this is something that does happen other times. Somebody's, like, in a deep sleep or a drug or, and these spider things are, like, jabbing them and poking them and sending electrical charges into them. It's like, we need to see your eyes. We're the oppressive nightmare police, and we need to see your damn eyes. Yeah. But yeah, so that's easily the most, like, oppressive cyberpunk part of the movie, because yeah, most of the society, it's more pristine, it's more clean, it's more tech noir. It's not, the world isn't necessarily controlled by an evil corporation and a horrifying government yet, but maybe it's on its way there with stuff like this happening. And speaking of the actors, I'm sure I've seen him in other things, but that guy that's like his second in command, he's Fletcher. He's played by an actor called Neil McDonough, who seems to be like the guy that's like who you get if you can't get Timothy Olyphant. Because they're really similar looking guys.
Yeah. He's been in a lot of stuff, too.
He's in a lot of stuff, and I often confuse the two. But I remember, because, like, for the longest time, so he's the bad guy in the Walking Tall remake with Dwayne Johnson. For years, I thought that was Tim Olyphant. For years, to me, it was a fact that Timothy Olyphant was in Walking Tall with The Rock. But that is wrong. It was not him.
It's weird. I think he was actually in one of the seasons of Justified as the bad guy, too, which is Oliphant's show.
Probably the weirdest thing I'm looking at when he's played here is that he played Dum Dum Dugan in Captain America, what's it called? The first one, the first Avenger. What a weird person to play Dum Dum Dugan. I realize it's a fairly obscure Marvel character. So Dum Dum Dugan was one of, like, Nick Fury's buddies that was in World War II with him, but also, well, they had to change it because of the floating timeline, right? So when they were doing, like, at first they were doing the SHIELD stuff in the 60s, it was believable that Nick Fury and these guys had fought as, in World War II, and now they were older, but they were spies and part of SHIELD. But eventually they had to make it so, Nick Fury he drank something or something, so he ages slower. Dugan is the same thing, but Dum Dum Dugan was always a different looking guy because he had a mustache and he wore, like, a bowler hat. And I think they do have him do that in the movie. But Neil McDonough seems like an odd choice for it. But anyway, doesn't matter. But yeah, so that for several times I've like mistaken him for Tim Oliphant, but the one I was so sure it was Tim Oliphant was Walking Tall. Like to me, that was just a fact. But yeah, he's Fletcher in this, who's sort of basically the second in command of the pre-crime unit. He has quite a few run-ins with him.
And then there's Jad and Knott as well, the other two guys with him.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a woman, and sometimes not.
Patrick Kilpatrick.
Sounds familiar.
Very, yeah, you know his face.
Yeah.
He's the one that's just always got the scowl on his face.
Yeah, right. But I mean, one of the things that helps the movie, I think, is like, yeah, Tom Cruise is a big star, but after that, it's not like a whole bunch of name actors. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly Max von Sydow has been around and is a pretty established guy, but you know, he's not going to really distract you too much.
Colin Farrell was not very.
Colin Farrell was, you know, just before he was kind of getting established.
This was one of the first things I remember seeing him in.
Yeah, same here. I mean, the first thing I think I saw him in was Tigerland, which is just a couple years before that, which I still think is a really great performance. Really good acting that proves that Colin Farrell's a pretty good actor. But yeah, and I like the scene that he has where in the chase where he and they have that brief fist fight. It's a pretty good fight. Like it's not crazy, you know, it's not super awesome action, but it's good.
Yeah. He's like immediately got a problem. You know, he's immediately got a problem with Anderton.
Yeah, I mean that to build that up, right? So they both wind up suspecting each other, right? But he does prove to be pretty smart because he finds out Anderton is being set up. The problem is he doesn't figure it out all the way, and he reveals this to the man who did do the setup and winds up getting killed because of it. But yeah, there is a little fast backstory that's brought in because when they get to the scene of that guy's death, the guy that Anderton was supposed to kill, but instead wound up, you know, killing himself, whatever like that. When they're looking at like that, they're saying, "Oh, well, this is why he killed him. This is the guy that stole his son, and he must have been some sort of child serial killer." And he says, "You know, before you came to this unit, what did you work in?" And he says something like the Treasury Department or something like that. It's like, "Well, I actually worked homicide, and I'm telling you, I've been to lots of crime scenes, and this is not a crime scene. This is like some sort of weird setup. Look at all this stuff on the bed. Like nobody would do that." And he figures out pretty quickly, like, no, there's something going on here, and that's really where he starts to figure out that Anderton is being set up.
Right, and for everything to be so futuristic, one thing that has not changed is guns. You know, normally like some sort of laser guns or something.
Right. I mean, they don't actually say it, but by the way they show it, I think it's probably understood that at this point, guns like that are like highly controlled.
Yeah.
And like most people don't have them, and that they're fairly rare things to have. And it is pretty cool, and it is an interest. I think I talked about the source, sort of a hopeful glimpse, like the cool non-lethal weaponry that the cops use, because they use those 6 sticks.
Yeah.
But they also use that cool gun where you flip it around. That's just sort of like a force blaster that just knocks you off your feet. Tom Cruise gets a hold of that and shoots a few of them in the factory with it. Man. So yeah, it shows like maybe some possible future of law enforcement of, you know, using some non-lethal weaponry to take people down. But yeah, so there are guns in the movie, but they don't say. But it seems to me that the guns are probably very rare and hard to get a hold of. There's even a thing in the end where you know, the last gun that's in the movie is like a present that like his wife or somebody gave him. Remember, they're having the big party to celebrate that the fact that things going, and they're honoring Max von Sydow's character, and he's presented with like some sort of like replica of some sort of like World War II gun or something, and that's the gun he winds up trying to shoot Anderton with towards at the end. So yeah, I just get the feeling that like they don't actually say it, but it seems likely that yeah, guns. Maybe they have changed, and maybe like those are like relics of the past, and maybe that's why. Like I get the feeling like guns have mostly been phased out, and that's one of the reasons why those are rare. Like there's very few guns left, and they're hard to get a hold of. I think they probably phased out.
It's just like a symbolic thing, but yeah, Anderton's gun is just like a Beretta, regular Beretta 9mm. that exists now.
Yeah.
But again, maybe that was his choice to use that instead of something
I'm
else.
trying to remember how he got it in the first place. It's not standard issue.
It's not.
So I'm trying to remember where exactly he picks it up. Because, I mean, he sees a vision of him shooting this guy with a gun. But I don't even think at that point he had a gun.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he had a gun the whole time. The whole time he was a cop.
Okay.
I think he was there.
I think as the leader, he might be the only one. I don't think the other ones had guns. They only had, like, that special weaponry. I could be wrong, though. Maybe they all still are cops, so maybe they did all have, like, ordinary, like, old school firearms like that. We just don't see them. Because they never even draw them.
Right.
Again, because they're hunting him, and they don't want to shoot him or anything.
You were talking about the Force gun thing, and that reminded me that I used to have this game on PS2, Minority Report.
Oh, I shouldn't be surprised there was a game. Oh, yeah, you get to use that gun?
Yeah. It was a pretty fun game from what I remember. Just like a beat-em-up style. It was a lot of fun. I had a bunch of really cool games on the PS2, but they all got stolen as well.
Yeah, so did mine. PS2 and PS2 games were all stolen in 2005. I mean, and some I didn't replace. Some I just never had again. Just too bad.
Terminator game I had that was really fun. See if I can find the name of it here. Dawn of Faith, I think it was. Terminator Dawn of Faith. Like a third.
Definitely didn't have too many movie games. I mean, because most movie games, the rule is they suck. I mean, there have been some exceptions. GoldenEye's the most notable, but
yeah, that is a general rule. But this was not the Terminator game was not tied to a movie in particular. It was just another in the franchise.
Right. They always make Alien games, and I always think maybe I should play. I mean, I did play Alien Isolation, which is really good.
It's good, yeah.
It would even kind of work as a good Alien 3.
Mm-hmm. It almost works too well. That game gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Too much.
What's weird is, like, the very first time I played with it, I was, like, too good at it. Like, everything went right for me. And then, like, I got to a certain point, and I forgot what I was doing, and I stopped. So then, like, quite a long time later, I was like, oh, I should play it again. And I had a lot more trouble. I was making mistakes left and right. Well, maybe not left and right, but still, like, I got into, like, a really far part of the game. I know now because I have beaten it, so I know how far I was in, without the alien even seeing me. I'd made it really far. And here I was, like, screwing up and getting seen a lot more often, and I don't know why. But yeah, that first playthrough, even though I didn't wind up beating it because I stopped, I was almost charmed. Like, everything went right. I barely ever got seen. I did everything right. The stupid robots didn't find me. It was great. I had more problems with robots than the aliens. More problems with them because they're everywhere. Like, at least there's just one alien, but the most robots are all over the damn place. Or androids, I guess is the term.
Yeah.
Ash, goddamn android.
That was supposed to be Ripley's granddaughter, right?
Yeah.
Still having fucking problems with the damn androids? Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Let's scrap the androids.
What's funny is, like, Aliens, the second one almost seems to, like, fix that itself. Because the whole point is, okay, we watch the first one, Ash flips out and stuff. But then the second one, they say, oh, we forgot to tell you, Bishop, that, it's because the alien, their android, like, flipped out and tried to kill people. And he's like, wow, I'm shocked. Was it an older model? It's like, well, it was like 68 years ago. So yes, he's like, oh, they always were a bit twitchy. Couldn't happen now. And he proves to be right. He actually turns out to be very useful to the team and heroic. So it's kind of funny that they kind of go back on that.
Yeah.
Because that's even further in the future, even more advanced androids. But maybe there was a reason for why, or maybe somebody reprogrammed them. I don't know. Because the whole idea was right. Like, the ship was under, like, a whole bunch of damage. I don't know why their androids' health would be tied to the ship, but it's kind of like everything's broken, so none of the androids are acting right either.
Right.
But yeah, I had more problems with them than the alien most of the time. I mean, you get to a point of the game where, yeah, it's all cat and mouse between you and the alien. But there's a part before that where, like, you barely even see the alien. And it's just the stupid androids. Everywhere you go, they're there. And you're like, damn it. But good game.
Yeah, I'd be trying to, like, look at something, and then here comes the alien. I've got to hide. And, like, damn it. I was in the middle of doing something.
Yeah. No, definitely a good game, though. But yeah, they've made so many others, and I've just thought about playing them and just haven't. Like one more, the big one, a bunch. This might have been like 100 years ago. There was a big release. I don't even know what system was supposed to be on. Like, what was it, Colonial Marines or something? That was supposed to be a really big deal, but I never actually played it. But so I couldn't tell you if it was good or not.
Oh yeah, you're talking maybe like 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, I think so. It was notable because it had like a bunch of delays. Like it was supposed to come out and they pushed it back. It was supposed to come out and they pushed it back. So that was another reason that hyped it up.
The campaign for that game was actually pretty good. I think it got all the backlash because two different studios. One did the campaign playthrough, and the other did the multiplayer stuff.
Yeah.
And everybody only cares about multiplayer now, so that's really what they complained about. Apparently, it wasn't that great. I think I may tried it very briefly, but campaign was fine to me. It was fun.
The earliest one I ever played was actually pretty good too. It was a first-person shooter, fairly early in the PlayStation's lifespan. Can't remember what it was called though. Alien something.
It was on PlayStation.
Yeah, the original PlayStation. It was an old game. It was early PlayStation too. It was like maybe like 97.
Wasn't AVP?
No.
Because AVP was out on the Jaguar.
Wow.
Originally.
That's hilarious.
And I think it also came out on maybe PC later.
Yeah. Well, most of them did.
I think it had versions on other systems, but it wasn't the first-person shooter. Yeah, I've played most of the ones that have come out like fairly recently, like in the past decade. Played a few. There's a new one coming out. They did some beta testing a few months ago. I don't know how that went, but it's all like everything now is only based on multiplayer.
Yeah. Is it an Alien one or Alien Predator?
It's Alien Predator. Which I just want to play a good. I just want to play a good game. I don't want to have to play with these other kids.
Yeah, same here. I just want an experience that's kind of like the world of the movies. It's not about racking up kills.
Yeah, that's what it is going to turn into. It's just like Call of Duty with these characters.
Yeah. Not a fan of that. I know a lot of people like it, and I'm not going to shit on it, but it's just not my thing at all.
I mean, I do a little bit of multiplayer, but not, I would rather, if I had my choice, like I like to have my game experience, basically just myself.
Right.
In this game.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. But, yeah, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised there was a Minority Report game. Most things got games, but yeah, I don't think I'd even heard of it. So that's kind of interesting.
Oh, let me ask you this real quick while we're talking about games. We'll be on topic a little bit. I'm going to be getting a Switch sometime soon for my daughters want a Switch.
Nice.
The system you have, does it only have just the console, or does it also have the handheld?
Okay, so the normal Switch is the hybrid. The Switch Lite is the one that's only handheld.
So the one you bought, it has both?
Yeah. The normal Switch you can hook up to your TV and use as a handheld if you want. Whereas the Switch Lite is just handheld, doesn't hook up to the TV.
I saw the Switch Lite was just the handheld, but I was wondering if the other console came with the handheld as well.
Yep. Okay. I mean that's like its whole gimmick is that it's both. It's like a hybrid.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
You're going to be getting that and probably Breath of the Wild.
I mean, I'm not even a Zelda person, and Breath of the Wild is incredible. So
I'm not really either, but yeah.
It sucks you into the world so much, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's a very calm, peaceful game to play, and yeah, it's really good.
They want it, so it's an excuse for me to play all the games I wanted to play.
Yeah, for sure.
And they want to get the new Animal Crossing. So
See, I've never played Animal Crossing, but I'm kind of tempted to play that one.
yeah, it looks
Just
interesting.
because, yeah.
I don't really know anything about it. I mean, I just know it's everyone is in the same world.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those games where it's just about like living in a community and just doing whatever you want to do type thing. It's like grow a garden or paint pictures. It's that kind of game.
It was big on the DS, I think, wasn't it?
Speaking of a few systems, I can't believe it's been around for so long now. Like the first one came out, I think, on GameCube, maybe. It's been around a long time, and I've never played any of them. So, but yeah, it's supposed to be sort of a soothing, peaceful type of game.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter like Elijah Wood was in the game, and
yeah, I saw that too. Like, people were super happy to be interacting with Elijah Wood.
He bought someone's turnips or something.
Yeah.
His expensive turnips or whatever he was farming.
Yeah. That's
cool though.
Well, it's like kind of the perfect game for like the COVID world we're living in now, where everybody's isolated. Because the thing about that game is like it gives you sort of a sense of community because you're like sort of hanging out with people. So
yeah.
It's something I like about it, even though I haven't even played it. But something that does appeal to me about it. So like I said, I am sort of tempted. I did actually just get a Switch game the other day. I got Bloodstained, which is basically like a spiritual successor to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's it's Castlevania game and everything but name. It's not Castlevania, but it plays exactly like Castlevania. It's in a world like Castlevania. It's pretty good so far. I'm a little underwhelmed, but I'm not very far into it, so it'll probably get better.
Is it a side scroller?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Side scroller, but it does use like 3D models for characters and backgrounds and stuff.
Was that full price?
It's cheaper than most. Like, because at least around here, like the average, like a brand new release for most games is $79.99. I got this for $54.99, which is still quite a bit, but I was willing to pay because I gotta buy something.
And then you can download the classics on there as well, right? Like a lot of the older games that they've remastered.
Yeah. Plus, there's Switch Online, which is like if you get that, you have access to a library of Nintendo and Super Nintendo games. And it's not very expensive because even I got it. Like you can get a year membership for like $24.99.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
Yeah. So yeah, in regards to that, I recently got the special NES style controllers for it. They're really cool that you can only buy online because they had like a half off sale of that like a couple months ago. So I can. It is satisfying. Like because I use it a lot as a handheld. But if I want to, I can't have it on the TV and I can play say like Castlevania 3. Although that's not part of the thing. That's one I actually own separately. I own the Castlevania collection, which I bought. But I can play Castlevania 3 with the the NES controller, which is very satisfying for somebody like me. I really like that authentic style experience.
It's wireless.
Yeah. Yeah, they're wireless. Yeah, and that's the only thing that really sucks is, as I said, we talked about this before, is certain games, like the controller that it comes with would be shit for. That's why I didn't get like the Street Fighter game or the Street Fighter collection or certain games. But there is a wireless controller that looks good, and it's so expensive. Oh my god.
More than like a game. Yeah, I saw.
Yeah, like here it's $89.99 Canadian. It will not drop in price. I keep wondering that maybe I could buy it at Shoppers Drug Mart if I get enough Optimum points. But I keep using my Optimum points for groceries because groceries cost so fucking much. So I don't know.
It's the Pro style controller. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, and the hilarious thing is you can get almost the exact same controller for like $29.99, but the difference is it's not wireless. Like that's the big difference.
I don't know if I can go back to corded controllers.
I know they're such a pain in the ass.
Such a luxury. That's one thing kids don't understand is what a bitch those controllers were like. Especially because they weren't very long, like the original Nintendo controller, like the Famicom was even worse because they didn't come out,
Yeah.
But they were like, designed for you to sit like 4 feet away from your television, which that's what we did back in those days anyway. But
I still I guess out of habit, I still kind of do that. I do not sit very far when I play games. as much as it's nice to sit back and take in like a cinematic experience game, like it's just not really. It just feels weird to do that. Every once in a while, I'll lean back a bit, but if I'm playing, I'm like, yeah. Gotta play, gotta go.
Yeah. Just remember, did you guys have a one of those like big televisions like on the ground when you were a kid? Like one of the big.
My family did not, but I was in households that did.
Yeah, I didn't either. That's the only reason I asked. With the big, like the wooden, the ornate wood around it, and
yeah, I had a friend whose TV was like that. I mean, that was well into the '90s too, because that was the thing. People didn't just get rid of stuff all the time. It's just like it still works. We'll use it.
Yeah, or get a repairman over here to fix it.
Yeah. Now it's like it's 5 years old. It's trash.
Right. I was going to throw it out anyway. It still works perfectly fine, but because TVs are, I mean, in comparison, are dirt cheap compared to what they used to be.
Yeah.
Dude, you can get like a 75-inch TV for like, I mean, less than $1,000 now.
Probably be about 1,000 here with the difference.
I'm just saying, like.
Oh yeah, I mean it's true.
55-inch for a couple $100.
Yeah, I mean what used to be like considered a luxury item is well into bounds of what most people. Yeah. As I said, that's why I keep wanting to get surround sound and forgetting about it because like for so long surround sound was like a dream, but now it's quite attainable to get surround sound. But
yeah,
I keep just getting other things, prioritizing. My priorities are all over the place since January. I've gone on weird kicks. Like right now, my next big purchase will probably be like a Transformers toy, which is kind of pathetic, but it's kind of what I want right now.
Well, and you're doing the Lego sets too,
right? Oh man, yeah, that was I'm trying to slow that down before it becomes a problem.
Perfect right now for it though. I mean, not a whole lot else you can do.
Well, yeah, but the problem is they're only small ones, and I really need a big one to scratch that itch, and they cost so much.
I know.
But I want a big one because it is so enjoyable to just putting it together. I find that very soothing and calming, which is funny because I'm not a puzzle person. I don't like puzzles at all. But this, you just follow the instructions and put it together. That's great. I like that. So yeah, what I really want to get is the Vader's Castle set, which is $79.99 here in Canadian. But I mean, those sets I got, they were all. 2 of them were almost $30, and one was over $30.
That's not cheap.
And they're small sets, man. The expensive one, the one that was over 30 was the TIE Fighter. That's cool. I mean, you get a TIE Fighter and then just get a little Rebel guy. But yeah, so I've got one set is a TIE Fighter and a little Rebel guy with a tiny thing. The other is the Snow Speeder, but it's the mini Snow Speeder. It's not the big Snow Speeder. Like, it's not the normal one that has 2 people in it. It's a small one that only has 1 person in it. Snow Speeder plus a little like swoop bike that a snow trooper goes on, and then the other one I got was part of a thing you might have seen their set. What are they called? Micro Masters or something like that. There's a few of those, and this one is it's the T-17 thing. The thing that Luke said he flew around in on Tatooine. It's the T-17 Skyhopper, and it's a sand person on a bantha.
Oh yeah.
So those are the Star Wars sets I have, and all I want is bigger. But although at least, I was at Walmart the other day. They don't even have anything big for Star Wars. But I might go out to the other Walmart and see what they have there soon.
Yeah, I did the Frozen Castle a few months ago. That was fun.
Yeah, that's cool. That was my favorite line growing up, was the medieval castles, which they don't do anymore. But in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, I showed you the ones I had. What sucks is the very last true castle line they did was, I always called them the Lion Knights. I don't remember what they're called, but the Royal Knights. They had like a lion emblem from the late 90s. Like, that's like what I most want. I wish I had gotten that castle. I love that castle.
They did a bunch of cool stuff, like in the 90s and 2000s with the Ninja series they did.
Yeah, Ninjago or...
Yeah, Ninjago, I think is what it is.
That's kind of the one that sort of replaced the castle thing, right? Because it's the closest to it. Because it's got similar type sets and it's got boats and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they look good. But I've tried to make a commitment. I'm saying it's going to be Star Wars. I'll do the Star Wars ones. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've watched the first episode of The Mandalorian. I'm looking forward to getting into that.
Yeah, they're good. They're not great, but I mean, they're good in a nice, simple way, right? Like you don't have to put all the weight and expectations on them of, say, like the Star Wars movies and stuff. They're just enjoyable for what they are. So yeah, I don't love it, but it's good. It's definitely worth watching.
Yeah, I saw Brian Posehn was in there as a cameo. It's like, of course, is Patton Oswalt going to be one of the fucking guys in here next?
If he is, I don't remember.
It was
But
just
the casting of it was really good, actually. I was really impressed by the casting. I mean, these are not of established characters; these are new characters, so it's not like they're playing somebody that exists before. But I just liked it a lot. I love that Werner Herzog's in it. He's never even watched Star Wars in his life.
That's funny. I didn't know he was in it.
No, yeah, he's important in it. That's kind of one of the main reasons why he got back on my radar not too long ago. And I was thinking about him, thinking that we should do some of his movies. Was really that everyone was talking about him just because he happened to be a character on The Mandalorian.
Did you ever see Grizzly Man?
I watched that recently.
That's right. You may have told me that. That's a disturbing movie.
Yeah, I mean, considering how it what happened. I mean, you watch it knowing what happened, right? Like, because that was one of the things I always knew about the movie, but I didn't know exactly how it went. I didn't realize that the guy did his thing and died, and then they made a documentary about it. I originally thought that like Werner Herzog actually knew him in life and was doing a documentary on him, and he happened to get killed during it. But no, it's just like Werner Herzog found out about this guy after his death, and then made a documentary, based on that guy's footage and interviews and stuff. And he actually had audio of the guy getting killed, and he listens to it.
I mean, it's a cautionary tale, leave nature alone.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for studying nature, but you have to respect the boundaries.
I mean, when you're in a place where there's an apex predator that's more powerful than humans,
Yeah. Because, I mean, people study animals in the wild. There's a proper way to do it. There's always, with stuff, there is some risk, but you take your precautions, and this guy was just like, no, I can do whatever I want. And, I mean, you can't deny he did have a way with animals. I mean, he was hanging out with those wild foxes like they were just like his dogs. You have to respect that. Like, he did have some sort of talent for it, because I've been around foxes, and they didn't want to hang out and play with me. They just ran away.
Maybe that's just a matter of patience.
Yeah. But he did have a certain talent, but yeah, he took it too far. But I mean, so I was really surprised by some of these people's reactions, though. Because, like, one guy that was, like, talking about it, I don't know if it was the pilot. I don't think it was the pilot, because he was friends with the pilot. But maybe it was the pilot. But anyway, somebody who was fairly close to him, he was saying all this stuff about it, and the same stuff we just said. But then he literally said that he got what he deserved. I was like, holy fuck, that's harsh, man. He got what he deserved? Like, and he didn't, like, try to clean it up and say, like, I meant, like, you got sort of what is supposed to happen in that situation, Because it's true, you walk up to a lion, you walk up to a tiger, what do you think is going to happen, right? But that doesn't mean you deserve it, right? But he said it that way. He said he got what he deserved. I was like, holy Jesus. The person that freaked me out most was the coroner. Like, he didn't seem real at all. He seemed like an actor hired to play the coroner. He was so fucking weird. Like, it was like he waited his whole life so he could be on camera and talk about this. He was so weird. He weirded me out. Like, he didn't seem like an actual real person at all. He seemed like a coroner in a horror movie. So weird. He weirded me out more than anything.
Yeah, I'm talking about, like, seeing basically the murder scene, from the air. Where you could see, the blood and the body parts everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's fine. I get it. He's talking about, like, yeah, how they, like, took pieces of the people out of the bear after the bear was killed and stuff like that. Like, I get it. But no, just, like, the weird stuff he didn't have to say. Like, he talked about how loyal the girlfriend was. And, like, it was just like, this isn't your place. Why are you talking about this? Like, I just found it really bizarre. Because, yeah, he had all these introspective things to say. He had all this opinion to add to it. He didn't just talk about like that. And I found it really odd. and off-putting. But anyway, and it just seemed like he was almost like prepped to be like a character in a movie. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to explain, but he didn't feel real. He felt like a made-up character invading. Except no, he was the real coroner. He was the guy that was really there. And I'm like, why is he like expounding like all these opinions and stuff like that have nothing to do with medical stuff? But anyway, found it odd. It's definitely an interesting movie, and Werner Herzog is a great filmmaker, and he's just as good at documentaries as he is at normal films, or fiction films, or whatever you want to call them. Plus, he has that really interesting, arresting voice, which he's played up quite well. Like, he's parodied himself in a lot of things. He did it in American Dad. He's in it in a few things. Speaking of this movie, American Dad parodies the opening scene of the whole thing where, like, he's trying to get the information about the murder that's going to happen, and, you know, he's using the screen and he's hand waving it away while the classical music plays, because the whole thing was Spielberg said, I wanted to set it like it's almost like he's conducting an orchestra the way he's doing it, so we wanted to do that. So there's a weird parody of that in an episode of American Dad, and I can't remember what's trying to be happen, but the weird part is Stan, the main character, the CIA agent. So the idea is he has like similar technology, not the precog stuff, but just to hunt somebody down. But the whole thing is he's not using it himself. It's like he's trying to find somebody. So he gets a bloodhound, like a dog, the literal bloodhound dog. And then the dog goes into the facility and plays out kind of the same scene where the dog is standing up and it's flipping through the screens while that music plays. And I don't get it. It didn't land for me. And I like American Dad, and I think it has funny jokes. But that's one of the weirder movie parodies I've ever seen. It's like, yeah, we'll do like that bit like in a Minority Report, but it'll be like it'll be a bloodhound doing it. And there's a part where like one of the screens he has is like a cat, so he gets mad, so he swipes that screen away. Another screen shows up like a steak, so he like pants at the steak for a second before he swipes that away. Like, I don't know, it's really weird. But I all I can think about when I see that ever since, I always think about that when I see the movie, is a bloodhound doing the same thing that Tom Cruise is doing, standing up. It's really weird. Not like an amorthoprized bloodhound. No, it's like a dog. Like it's an ordinary dog, but he's standing on his hind legs doing this. Really odd. The music, of course, by John Williams, because he does like everything that Spielberg does. Nothing particularly memorable. I mean, the most memorable music in the movie to me is not John Williams' score. It's just added music, probably. But it's not like it's a miss or anything like that. You know, what's funny is the last movie John Williams did before this was also 2002, was Attack of the Clones. And Attack of the Clones has a very similar scene to this movie, whereas Tom Cruise falls on a conveyor belt in like a weird car-making factory, and he has to dodge all the robot hands putting stuff down on top of him. The same thing happens in Attack of the Clones on, Geonosis. I know you probably, that's the worst, to me that's the worst Star Wars film. We're not going to get a big Star Wars thing. To me that is the worst. That's the worst Star Wars film. So maybe you've purged it from your brain, but that's a big part on Geonosis, is that like there's this whole part where Padme and Anakin, along with 3PO, they wind up like on a big production line on like a conveyor belt while all these robot parts are coming at them and slamming stuff down. Do you remember that?
No, it's been a long time since I've seen it.
Well, anyway, it's very similar. It's funny because those movies both came out in the same year, and they both were scored by John Williams. But yeah, there's a very similar part where we have got our main character on a conveyor belt in a factory, and the robot arms are coming down, putting stuff down. He has to dodge it, and stuff gets built on top of him. The gimmick that they do in Attack of the Clones is like 3PO is not fast enough, and they replace his head with a battle droid's head and put a battle droid's head on his body.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. But besides that, there's also a whole thing where, like, yeah, Anakin is dodging around and trying to use his saber and stuff. And at one point, his arm does get pinned down. And yeah. And similar stuff happens to Tom Cruise in this. He's dodging stuff. At one point, he gets pinned down. But he gets lucky that they actually build a Getaway vehicle right around him. And then he takes off in it. I like the cars. The cars are cool. I hope we see cars like that in my lifetime.
I doubt it.
Well, again, the thing is, the movie is being a bit more restrained as far as a future movie goes because the cars aren't all just flying around. The cars are still earthbound, although they can go up like crazy walls. Because remember, there's a scene where when he's in the early part of the escape, is he's jumping from car to car as they're going up and down like hundreds of feet in the air, which is pretty cool. Tom Cruise wishes they could have done that for real because he's so addicted to stunts.
Yeah, Lexus, right? Lots of Lexus.
Yeah, maybe.
Big Lexus and Nokia.
Yeah, Nokia you see is quite prevalent. You see it on some of the screens. But speaking of like things they got right, they got one. Well, this doesn't prove they got it wrong, but But if they didn't get it wrong, it means the character's making a very antiquated joke. Because there's a part where, remember, so he's on the run and he's got Agatha, and he takes her to that guy that runs like the illegal place that does like, I don't know, illegal technology and stuff. So he wants like to hook her up. And at first, I can't remember what does he ask him for? Because he says like he needs something in payment. And at first, like Tom Cruise like refuses or something, and he like shrugs and says, "Then take her to Radio Shack." And there's no more Radio Shack.
Nope.
So it's possible that in that alternate timeline, Radio Shack existed, or it's possible that same timeline Radio Shack went under, and he's just making a really old joke saying, Radio Shack is a thing that used to exist in the past. But anyway, that's just something I caught, that he mentions Radio Shack. I'm like, nope, no Radio Shack in 2054 unless something really strange happens.
Yeah. It's like, let's say Radio Shack's been gone for 40 years. I don't think anybody would even get that as a joke anymore, right? Like, what is a Radio Shack?
Yeah, so you would have to assume that this world presupposes that Radio Shacks would still be around, which is not like the biggest mistake in the world.
They were around until a few years ago.
Yeah.
As I went to one, I got a power cord for one of my game systems.
Yeah. It's funny, though, when you think about like how this does seem to happen in a lot of these movies. It's like how when you watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, like the airline is Pan Am. Like, nope, no Pan Am. Or you watch Blade Runner. It's like Coca-Cola, very good. Atari, no.
Yeah.
No more Atari. And the other thing about movies like that made in that era is they presuppose that well into the 21st century that the Cold War is still going on and the Soviet Union is still humming along, which I guess is proof that the Soviets were really good at hiding how much things were falling apart for them in the 80s. Yeah.
Some of that's hard to predict, but I don't know. I guess at that time Atari was huge,
Yeah. I mean, you could say Star Trek was smart because it figures out that the Cold War is definitely going to end. But at the same time, Star Trek is set really far in the future, so they don't have to like really worry about too much about accuracy. It's like, yes, by the time Star Trek comes, I'm sure the Cold War will be over. And of course, they're right. So it's not like they're saying, 2035 or something like that. The weirdest part is, I think we talked about this before, is I can't remember because there's a slight difference in the Akira, in the manga version and the anime in the years. The manga version takes place in 1 year, and they changed the year for the anime. I can't remember which is which, but in one version, and in both, the same thing. But in one, they use the year 2020, because one of them is set in 2019, right? One version of Akira is set in 2019, and one of the things that's supposed to happening is they're in Tokyo, Neo Tokyo, is they're getting ready for Tokyo to host the Olympics in 2020. Well, that was supposed to happen, and now I guess it's not going to happen because of the worldwide COVID situation. But I mean, if we didn't have like a worldwide thing, that is exactly what was going to happen. Tokyo was going to host the 2020 Olympics. Now it's looking like they'll probably have to make it 2021 and throw the whole thing off.
Yeah, it looks like the anime is 2019.
Okay, so it's the anime and not the manga. But yeah, so in the anime is taking place in 2019, and part of the thing is next year we've got the Olympics here in Tokyo. And that was really going to happen. So there's lots of instances like that, right? You always see lists every once in a while. It's like movies that manage to like predict future events or, future things and stuff like that. Sometimes they're really close, and sometimes they're just like in the ballpark.
They've already postponed the Olympics, haven't they?
I don't know. I know that certain countries, Canada and Australia, are the first two countries saying that we just won't send our athletes. So I assume a lot of other countries followed, and they've had to do that. But the last thing I heard was that. That was like a month ago.
Only because, like, I know that stuff takes months and months of preparation.
Yeah.
And we're like, it's the summer games, right? So we're coming up like here in a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way it's going to happen.
I don't know, man. I think people need to chill out a little bit because, I mean, if this thing's going to become seasonal, I mean, we can't just stop our world, you know?
Well, I mean, the world's not stopped, though. Everybody acts like it's stopped.
Well, stuff like that is stopped. I mean, as far as entertainment goes, it doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, it's all right.
I mean, live shows, musical shows, plays, anything where people are together.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. Like I said, I'm pretty lucky because of where I am in my life at this time. Because, like, if it had happened like 15 years ago, it would have been a lot worse for me personally. It's not a good time, but I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, these people, these athletes that have trained their whole lives, it was all leading up to this summer. There are people that had weddings planned and stuff like that. I mean, it's tough.
I mean, let's say you're a, stand-up comedian, or you're a, touring, concert musician, or, something like that. Your career is pretty much on hold.
Yep.
I don't know. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, but like I said, it is what it is. I hate that expression, but I just mean it's a virus. Like, I've heard people say stuff like "enough is enough," as if this is just something we all decided to do for fun. Okay, it's not fun anymore. Enough is enough. Well, okay, the virus doesn't work that way. It doesn't say, "Oh, you're right, enough, I'll stop." It doesn't work that way, right? You can say enough is enough, but
I just think in hindsight, all we're doing is prolonging it. When you need to let it run its course, like in hindsight, because it's never going to go away.
It'll go away, just in a not exactly in a fully thing. Because I mean, like the Spanish flu went away sort of to the point where life could be resumed. But it took a big chunk of the world's population before it did.
From what I understand, the flu is seasonal because, when we're experiencing the flu, other parts of the world aren't, and vice versa. And I guess in that period of time, it manages to mutate just enough to where it's different than the previous year. So we can think of COVID-19 having potential to do the same thing. So we're basically looking at having a common flu and COVID-19, or whatever it's going to be called, every year, So that's pretty fucking crazy when you think about it.
Yep. This too shall pass, but yeah, it'll be a different world.
I mean, do you ever think we'll be in a place where, we saw, shows, concerts, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think we'll resume. I think we'll get back to that, but
will we all be for the rest of our lives?
No, I don't think it's the rest of our lives. Because, like I said, even some of the worst outbreaks in history didn't have the sophisticated, technology and stuff to deal with it that we have now, and the world was still managed to get back to normalcy. Of course, again, it's a sort of a double-edged sword too, right? Like, think of all the people that got killed in the Black Death, the plague. I mean, it had a crazy death count, but it could have been even worse. And it's weird. I wonder how it balances out, because they didn't have any of the technology that we have now, but at the same time, at least the world was a little more contained. People weren't jumping on planes either. I mean, what was it, like 1 in 4 people in Europe died from that? So I don't know. In some ways, we're better off because we have better technology, and we're, scientifically we understand this stuff better. But at the same time, the world's so connected, we're also better set up for spreading stuff. So I don't know how they balance out with each other.
To sound very cynical, I mean, there are too many people on this planet.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who thinks that too. And I don't think, we need a wave to come kill them, but yeah.
No, I'm just saying, I mean, sometimes things happen for a reason. I don't know. This thing's so bad because it's so damn contagious, That's what separates it from other things.
Right, because there are other things that have been more deadly but less contagious.
Exactly. So I think when this thing's all said and done, we're going to come across a lot of people that were asymptomatic, because that's what they're finding when they're doing studies of, some of these Navy ships where they've had outbreaks, and they come to find out that 60% of the whole damn ship was asymptomatic or something like that. Whatever the percentages are.
Yeah.
Very, very odd, because you've got healthy people walking around distributing the virus is the problem.
Yeah.
That they don't know they have it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're at a really weird juncture right now because a lot of places are recovering, but then there's a few that still are getting worse. The U.S. is getting worse. Brazil is getting worse. And there's a couple others.
That's what I heard. London has been 24 hours without a confirmed case. So.
Canada seems to be getting better, but it could be a mirage, right? Like it's hard to tell. That's what I worry about. I worry about like some of these countries, obviously including my own, the ones that have looked like they've been doing better the past few weeks, that just suddenly that it can all, turn. That's what worries me. Some of those countries haven't even gotten to that point yet. Some of the countries still have so many cases every day. They say Brazil's getting really bad.
Yep, and just think Africa. Why has Africa not been hit harder?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't followed too many of these closely. I don't know enough about when certain countries close their borders, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the easy answer is all of them. Every country closed their borders too late, in hindsight, obviously. But
well, I mean, you just think a place like Africa could really be devastated because they don't have the health care that other places may have. They don't have the level of health care. But there's a lot of talk, man. I've heard stuff like nicotine helps stop the process, and helps you deter it or get over the symptoms easier or whatever. So, but I don't know.
No idea.
Not necessarily smoking cigarettes, because I think that contributes to the lung problems, but nicotine in other forms. We're saying this damn malaria drug. I don't know. You hear so much stuff these days. I don't know what to believe.
I know. As we said, one of the bigger problems going on is misinformation and stuff. So yeah, I think this is a really critical. Well, I mean, it seems like we're at a critical juncture, but as I said, in a month from now, maybe we'll find out that we weren't at all. That this is just still, the extension of it.
A month from now, everybody's like completely worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, right? I hate to think it, and I really hope not. But I mean,
like 2 months ago, we were trying to downplay this whole thing.
Yeah,
but
exactly. A lot of people think, you think I was real. I mean, based on what I'd heard and believed to be credible, it's hard to separate it. I really thought by about this time, towards the end of May, we'd see some light at the end of the tunnel. And maybe we do, but it's so maybe that you really can't, put any stock in it.
I was thinking like April,
No. I think April was the worst month.
Now we're saying, June, July. I've got like tickets to stuff in November. I hope it comes back before then.
Yeah. I got tickets to something in July.
That may not happen.
And even if it did, I don't think I'd want to go. I think I would still find July as a little iffy. But I have that luxury compared to some people. I mean, some people, whether they feel safe or not, they might have things open up, and that's that. They have to go. I have the luxury where, like, when things open up, if it's at a point where I don't feel personally comfortable with it, I really don't have to engage as much as other people. So I have that luxury that a lot of people don't have, right? Where I can go, I think it's too soon. Other people can think it's too soon too, but it's like, well, I still have to do it because it's my job or whatever,
But you're also in the camp to where if you got it, you probably wouldn't have too hard of a time with it.
Right, but it's still a really, it's. I mean, people can't downplay like how bad it is to have. Like, yes, like you're gonna live through it, but it's still pretty awful. And I guess that's the other thing. Like the older people and people with the compromised immune systems, they're the most at risk, of course, to die from it. But people got that lost and thought that also meant they're the most like susceptible just to catch it. We're all basically equally susceptible to catch it.
Right.
It's just like who's more susceptible for it to actually really damage you. Like George LaRock got it, and he's about as healthy as a person can be. He played in the NHL not too long ago. He's only in his 40s. And no, he's not going to die from it, but my God, he's been in a miserable condition. He can barely breathe. So it's nothing you want to get.
It's a different on case by case basis. But I don't know.
It hit even a healthy person gets hit really hard by this. But the good news is, the latest numbers I read about Canada anyway is like right now, of all the reported cases we've had since it started, slightly over more have recovered. So that's where you try to be optimistic and stuff, but then you've also heard about cases where people had it, got over it, and then got it again, which must be...
You can get it again?
Some people have gotten it again.
What the fuck? I thought if you had the antibodies, you were good.
See, that's what happened in Korea. A bunch of people got it again in Korea.
Really? Does that
not
mean
not a bunch, but people did.
Doesn't that also mean you can't do a vaccine? I mean,
well, that's the thing. That's why they're so worried about this. They think if people are waiting for a vaccine anytime soon, it's very unrealistic.
Oh, we got 3 more years on the early side of it. Yeah. Right? Isn't 4 years the soonest they've ever been able to do a vaccine? Something like that?
I don't know. I don't know enough about the history of it. I'm just saying, like, whatever the normal thing for vaccines is, they are not optimistic about reaching that at all. They're saying
that's true. A vaccine's not going to work. I mean, if you can get it again, because all the vaccine does is give you the antibodies.
Yeah.
Fuck, I don't know, man. That's crazy. I hadn't heard that.
That's some people in Asian countries have gotten it over it, and then gotten it back. In China and Korea, at least.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know.
It's interesting to see how pop culture spins out of this too. We're going to see like movies and TV shows that like are going to like be set against a COVID backdrop and talk about it and acknowledge it. So that'll be kind of interesting.
Like my wife watches this cooking thing on the Food Network. It's just this. It's called The Pioneer Woman.
Yeah, that's actually one my mom really likes. My mother watches it and brings her stuff up all the time.
And she's been doing it the whole time during quarantine. Like she's having her kids film it just on like cell phone cameras and stuff. And I'm like, man, it looks great. Like, why would you ever need to go back to that other formula? I actually kind of like it better. From not having.
I haven't seen that,
but
yeah, that's cool.
So I mean, it's like stuff like that. You may realize we don't really even need a film crew in here. We can save the money and just do it like this. It looked great. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like I said, like certain things are impossible, and yet other things adapt way better to it than you'd expect. I've gotten completely used to watching John Oliver's show Last Week Tonight without an audience. Like, who even needs a friggin' audience? Right. I don't need them laughing. I know where the jokes are. I don't need to hear them laughing. It's almost like having a laugh track. But yeah, I'm getting used to just seeing him like with a white void instead of like in a studio with an audience.
Well, I keep getting emails from ESPN saying sports are coming back. So they're trying to reassure me that they want my money.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I've read about is like, of course, the hockey stuff, and every other league in the world has canceled it. The NHL has not canceled its season. Every other league has canceled its season. The NHL is just holding out hope to get the money, right? And I mean, of course, I'm emotionally invested. I want a season. Of course I do. But at the same time, like, there's no plan that possibly works. Because they're talking about like this thing where, okay, there's been about 68 to 70 games for most most teams. There's 82 in a season, so we can get rid of those. In the regular year, 16 teams make the playoffs. We're going to do a thing. We could do a thing where 24 are in the playoffs, and instead of having a 7-game series versus the best, I think 3 out of 5 or 1 out of 3, and then on to the 7. They talked about various things, but none of it will matter because the Canadian-U.S. border is not opening. That's not opening, so you can't do the NHL. Period. So they can talk about all their contingency plans all they want, but
can you not fly? Like if I wanted to fly to Canada right now, I couldn't do it.
Not without some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Exemption. You couldn't just do it. No, you need some special reason to. You need to get an exemption. So that's why right now, like a very few people are flying, and they're flying on like empty airplanes because only certain people are permitted, at least for international travel. I don't know about the U.S., but our provincial borders are closed. I can't go to New Brunswick. They can't come here.
Really?
Yeah.
That'll change soon, though. I mean, it has to, right?
At this point, I don't know anymore. I guess so. Like you said, regardless of what's going on, the world does have to go on one way or another. But something like sports, I mean, I understand because it's not just a bunch of millionaires. There's a bunch of ordinary people who their livelihood is tied up, and then people who work in the arenas and stuff like that. So it's not like I'm not sympathetic to that, but I'm just saying, as much as I'd love to see the NHL resume, it's not happening.
Well, you could always, assuming they open the borders up, you could always have games without an audience, just televise it.
That's what they talk about too. They're talking about using about 8 or 9 neutral sites, like not even like a few of them might be NHL cities, a few of them might not be with no crowd. But again, you have to remember that the players are scattered all over the place.
Right.
There are players that who are European that went back to Europe when this started.
Stuck there,
and now they're stuck there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you do then? Do you just resume with whoever's available? It's like, oh, we have our European star, we can't use him, but we've got a guy from the farm team we'll call up, so we'll just have a bunch of AHL players on the NHL roster,
Do you miss hockey enough to do that?
It's getting to that point for me, where I'd certainly watch it, but again, and that's obviously the argument too. When they had this argument during the lockout shortened seasons, which is just like, well, do you want it back 100% or, and that's the other thing. Some people, because most of the NHL players that I've read about, they say we're optimistic that we can resume the season. We want to do it, but there's been at least a few that have said if you have to do it in a weird compromise way, then don't do it. Like I remember Matt Duchene, he plays in Nashville. He said, I don't know about this whole 2014 thing and thing that you're talking about doing. He said, because these guys, we put everything on the line. Our whole life is so we can win a Stanley Cup. He's like, I can just imagine a team wins the Stanley Cup under this format, and the rest of their lives, people are just going to try to take it away from them and tell them that it's not legitimate, which is kind of true.
I don't know.
I mean, we had 2 lockout shortened seasons, one in 94-95 and one in 12-13. In both seasons, 48 games were played instead of 82. And obviously there was ordinary playoffs and there was the Stanley Cup. And there's plenty of people that still think that those are kind of not too legitimate, those Stanley Cup winners, because it wasn't a completely normal season. Not illegitimate, but it's like put an asterisk there.
I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, you don't have a lot of choice. It's not like you're not going to win the Stanley Cup if you have the opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, again, Stanley Cup's been around so long, but I guess the fact that it's actually been wiped out by a thing as petty as a lockout, no 405, it wouldn't be the big tragedy. Like, I would feel bad that the Stanley Cup wouldn't be awarded this year, but I've lived through it not being awarded already for a way dumber reason.
Or that they were on strike?
Well, yeah, the lockout, it's kind of like a strike. But yeah.
Is that what that is? Like they wanted more money or something?
Yeah, it comes down to a big disagreements between the owners and the players, basically. Fighting over revenue and shit, right? Like stuff that the average person just pisses you off because it's millionaires and billionaires fighting with each other over our money, And I mean, I've lived through 2 lockouts in my lifetime. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3. I've lived through 3. One wiped out an entire season, and 2 shortened the season basically
Really?
half. So 3 lockouts in my lifetime.
Entire season, huh?
Yeah, the NHL is the only league to lose an entire season to that.
So, you, as a fan, you had to have been extremely pissed off at the situation, right?
Well, that's the only thing I can think of course, is in 04, 05, there was no NHL season, and that did affect my world, and there were commercials and stuff and things in pop culture that reflected that, you know?
Well, this thing we're living through now has a purpose, has a reason for it. That the lockout is just kind of...
I know. That's why I'm saying, as bummed as I will be, it won't shatter me or break my heart the way it could, because I've already seen a season wiped out completely for stupid reasons. So at least this, again, is a legitimate reason because of, a world health concern or whatever like that. But and it will be sad. For instance, the AHL, the minor league right under it, has never lost a season. The AHL has been around since 1936. This is the first time since 1936. It's its whole history. The Calder Cup, that's its Stanley Cup, won't be awarded. That makes me kind of sad. And I'll feel bad again if this season is lost, and it probably will be. But I've already seen it lost for worse reasons, so it won't affect me as badly as it could.
I don't know.
What's funny is whenever I read these articles or hear the pundits talk about it, what's funny to me is they talk about how they need a few weeks to train and shit. I'm like, no, just jump right into it. I don't care if they're a little, because it's not like anybody has an advantage over anybody else, right? So I don't know why they say they need to let's say a miracle happens and tomorrow they say the world can open up, everything is better, you can resume. So now, the NHL is almost a full 2 months behind. We'd be well into the playoffs at this point, right? More than half of the teams in the NHL would not even be playing at this point if the season had played normally, because we'd be in the second or even maybe the third round of the playoffs, and there's 4 rounds. So let's say everything resumes and it says perfect, well, you can go, and they want to say, okay, but we'll start maybe at the end of June because these guys need a few weeks to train. That's bullshit. I don't think they need any weeks to train. They're the best. They're supposed to be great athletes. I get it. And whenever you see a guy that's missed some time coming back, he'll talk about, it'll take me a little while to get up to game speed, but this is different. Everybody's in the same boat. So I say, if the NHL could resume tomorrow, then just fucking do it. Don't tell me they need to train. Sure, we'll have some games where they're not all in tip-top shape, but it's fair. Everybody's on the same playing field. So I think that's nonsense. We've already lost so much time, and you want to lose more training? Give me a break. Because that's something I'll accept. That's something I'm willing to accept. I'm willing to accept the fact that they're not all at 100% or whatever. If we can resume, this will save some guys' season. Some guys were injured, and they were gone. The playoffs wasn't going to happen for them. They were done. They had surgery, whatever. So if the playoffs started now, most teams would be almost 100% healthy. So don't tell me we're going to waste time training and practicing. You can practice as you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a moot point because it's not going to happen. But I just think that's really silly. It's like, if we got the green light, it's good. We can resume the season. But first, let's take 2 or 3 weeks to train. Like, fuck no. Enough time has been lost.
Well, they should be training now. I mean, it's their responsibility to stay in shape, right?
They can stay in shape, but it's a pretty different thing. How easy is it for 1 or 2 guys to get a whole rink to themselves?
Sure, I get that. I just mean all these guys probably have gyms in their house, right? So
yeah, that's what I mean. They can stay in shape, but they just can't do team practices, really. And I get it. All that matters. All that's important. Hockey's very team oriented. You gotta get your rhythm going, passing the puck to each other, and it's especially hard being a goalie if no one can shoot on you. But I'm just saying, I realize all that matters, but this is the highest level. These are the best players in the world. It's okay by me if they have to jump right back into the game without some practice. They'll be okay. And again, it's not like anybody has an advantage over everybody else. It's not like one team got to train and the other didn't. Because then, yes, everybody's in the same boat. So it doesn't matter. But like I said, if they said green light, we can go, I think it would be a complete waste of time to say, oh, we'll give them 2 or 3 weeks to train. Why? Enough time has been lost. Let's get to it.
Yeah.
I mean, if that first few weeks is a little shaky and the guys don't feel 100%, that's normal. And no one's going to care. We're just going to be happy that it's back. But yeah, it's funny. So now the German soccer league is resumed. So it's on TV now. I don't know if it's on TV for you, but it's on TV for me. So I watch from time to time. A German league I didn't even know existed, playing in empty stadiums. I get kind of a kick out of it, no pun intended. And I mean, that's risky, but at the same time, I'm glad that Germany has taken this step because they can kind of show, will this backfire horribly or not? Because maybe if it doesn't, it could show that others could start to do kind of similar things over time. So I'm glad somebody's taken the step. I mean, it has its risks and all, but we shall see. Anyway, we'll go back to Minority Report because there's still something fairly off topic I wanted to talk about too.
Okay.
Well, I mean, not 100% off topic. It's still movie and show related and stuff like that. But obviously the big theme running through this is free will versus determinism, which you can find in a lot of works. And I mean, I guess this movie does come down, I mean, like most, because you want to be optimistic, right? Most people don't want to believe that our choices are kind of made for us and everything is predetermined. It doesn't matter what we do. So this movie really comes down on the more optimistic side of things, because that's what Agatha is telling him when he's pointing the gun at the guy, thinking that this is the man that killed his son, right? Like you can, the future's not written. You can still choose. And then of course you do get the sort of irony that he gets to spring that on the bad guy, Black Sun Sydow, at the end, right? He says, "Here you are. You're presented with a choice. Here's your choice. You can accept the fact that the program you've championed and believed in and all this stuff is actually flawed, and kill me, and then of course you'll, or what is it? Yeah, it's you can accept that it's flawed and it won't happen, or you can kill me to cover it up, but then you'll go to jail or whatever." It's something like that, right? Like that's his choice. It's like you get to make the choice here, and then he takes the third option by killing himself.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a pretty good scene early on where Widower, that's Widower is Colin Farrell, is talking to Anderton sort of about the pros and cons and the drawbacks of the program, and he says like it has sort of a legalistic drawback because the fact that these are people that you're arresting individuals who have technically not broken any laws, and he is that but they will thing, and he does that whole thing about he throws the ball. He has to acknowledge the fact that Widower is raising something that's basically a paradox. The Precogs, prevent an event that is already accepted as a fact, but it'll never be allowed to happen. So, you get your time loop type thing in there, right? Like, it was going to happen because we saw it, but because we saw it, we were able to stop it.
Right.
So it's not a time travel thing, but it's kind of like a similar type deal, right? And then you get the thing that happens in so many of these movies too is like the whole idea of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Right.
Because he wouldn't have even known how to find the guy if he hadn't actually been the person who saw the vision himself. Because most of these people that are committing these crimes, they don't see visions of it or anything like that. They just go out, they have their moment, and then suddenly the pre-crime police come in and stop them. The whole point here is we have a pre-crime police seeing a vision of himself about to commit a crime, and it leads him right to it. So sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, which again we see in so many of these movies where it's like something is fated or predicted to happen, and you find out the whole reason it's going to happen is because the person knew about it being fated, predicted to happen. And sometimes either knowing about it is what led them to it, or knowing about it is what tried to make them avoid it, and in trying to avoid it is what led them to in the first place. What's that thing? Oh, it might be one of the 1001 Nights tales. It's about the thing where back in the old days in the Middle East, there was a man, and he was in like his bazaar or his market or whatever, and he saw death, and death looked right at him, and they both like looked at each other and sort of had like a moment of acknowledging each other. And then the man is so shaken by this, he thinks death is after him. So death. Oh, but no, that's not it. What is it? Okay, so there's a man, and he goes and sees maybe he sees like a vizier or a psychic or something, and they tell him that he he tells him that death is coming for him or something like that. And then so he decides like to get the hell out of there, so he like rides all night. So he goes to like a faraway city, and then when he's in the city, he sees death in the crowd, and they have like a weird moment, and it's something like I can't remember, but something like, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's because he was told that he would die that he tried to go somewhere else, which ran him into death in the first place. And death has like a line saying like, that's why the death says, I was supposed to meet you in blah blah blah, which is why I was so surprised when I met you here. It's that sort of thing. It's a very old story, but it sort of deals with the same idea. I know I kind of butchered that story, but I got the main points across. I don't know what the official name of the story is, but I know it's a well-known story that people know. Nothing gets brought up. But yeah, the whole idea is, he'd heard about death, and it led him right into death's arms.
Yeah, it changed the location, but not the outcome.
Yeah. But but also like he brought about the outcome because he knew about it, right? Like it was actually his knowing about it which brought it out. It's like how he happened to run into death. Like he wanted to get away from death, but the whole thing was he was fated to meet him somewhere else. Yeah. Anyway, I'll have to look that up and find out what the story is. So you have the idea here that the prediction drives the act.
And him not killing John at the end pretty much says that the true crime division is flawed.
Yeah, and that's what they determined. That's what they determined, that the true crime equivalent is flawed. Plus, there was other stuff that came to light, too, like the idea that there were minority reports. Like, even though Minority Report is not what it sounds like the whole thing hinges on it, it still is an important part of the movie because they do exist, right? So they do take it apart. Yeah, so when the movie ends, they do dismantle the pre-crime thing. They go back to normal stuff. They also release all the people that had been arrested on those charges, although the cops continue to monitor them. And probably most importantly, they actually let the Precogs out and have real lives in a hidden location. Because you just feel so bad for them because they were like, and early in the movie when they're showing them off and Widower goes into the room, even though they're not supposed to go into the room, Cruz himself or Anderton says it's best not to think of them as human, but of course they are human. So, and he finds that out better than anybody. He goes on the run with one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole fact that he's on the run as a hunted man is the only reason why he comes into contact with the man he's supposed to kill. It's that kind of thing. That's what I was trying to say.
And they dismantle the whole program. The Precogs get to go live in a little house together like normal people.
Yeah.
They release all the prisoners, even though they say they are keeping a close eye on them.
Yeah. And also, Tom Cruise reconciles with his wife, which I guess is just... Because the whole thing was, like a lot of couples that lose a child, it broke up their marriage and they were separated, but this brings them back together. I don't know how I feel about that scene, though, when they're together in the house and Agatha's there and she starts seeing like a possible future for the kid if he had lived or whatever.
Right.
It's a little overly sentimental, which is one of the main things that we can accuse Spielberg of in his movies, is that he goes a little hard in that direction sometimes. Sometimes I've defended it for certain movies and said, no, it was appropriate. I think it was appropriate. Here, I think there was enough sentimental stuff going on. You didn't need that extra bit where she's saying, oh, he turns 10 now and blah, blah, blah. Now he's in college and he falls in love with a beautiful girl. And it all comes around anyway, back to something else. So it seems like a weird diversion.
And then them being together again, it just kind of perfect ending, right?
Yeah. Which is another thing of Spielberg's, is like another recurring theme in his movies, no matter how different they are, is like the trauma of like broken families. And here he sees and I get it, here's another chance to like repair one in a really weird way, but I guess it makes sense in a certain way. But yeah, I don't think it hurts the movie, but I think it's unneeded. Like, we don't need to know, oh, he reconciles with his wife. Like, I don't care. But I mean, I guess we need to have something. He is the hero of the movie. He's been through a lot. It's good to have something. And at the end, his son is still gone. So I guess it's good to tie it up where something good happens for him, I suppose.
Yep. I'm going to stop using those drugs. I'm going to love my wife.
Yeah. You could always make another kid.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there. I mean, if we go back to like hundreds of years ago and thousands of years ago when death was a lot more common in our society, that's what people did. They lost kids all the time and they made new ones.
That's why you had like 10 kids.
Yeah, because the mortality rate was super high. Like, how many of them are actually going to live?
God forbid they're female. Got a fox in the hen house.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that's good about the world we live in now is, death is still a normal part of life and people die all the time, but it's not like it was, centuries ago, right? So it's made us a lot more... I don't know. I don't know which society would value life more, really. Because if you go back to, say, I don't know, like medieval times or whatever like that, where the average life expectancy is about 40, and old people are super rare, and kids and people dying of like fairly what we consider like minor things was a normal part of life. Does that mean they value life more than we do, or do we value life more because like death seems so devastating to us? Because for most people, I mean, there's still unlucky people, but for most people, like for instance, like how many kids did you grow up with whose parents died or a parent died? Like I knew one, and that was only by the time I got to high school. By the time I got to high school, I knew 2 kids, and I didn't know them well, and each had one parent die. But if you go back, even to say, not even that far ago, let's go back to the 19th century. Kids whose parents died, there were tons of them, and they knew each other. It was a total normal thing if you went to school in the 19th century and you had like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 people that you knew whose both parents were dead. So I do wonder about that. Like, which society would value life more, or do we value it the same?
You mean the shorter lifespan would value life more?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, if you go back far enough to these older societies, medieval times, whatever, people lived, not only do people like, just in general, even if they were healthy or considered healthy, they lived less, shorter lives. But then again, death was just all around. People that were like healthy one day were like dead the next because of this or that. And so it was such an ordinary part of life that people had to like shrug it off and move forward more than people do now, because it was just so common.
Mm-hmm.
It was still very sad. I think people still very much cared when people died, but it was so common that it was such a regular part of life. Again, we live in a society where death is still a regular part of life, but it's not the way it was.
I would say that we probably value life more only because of the luxury we have in our lives.
I suppose that's true.
As opposed to, like every day was a struggle for those people,
Yeah. Plus, we live, at least as far as we'll just limit this to Western society, although I'm sure it works with other too. Plus, we live in a less religious world now.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, if you were, say, I don't know, somebody living in medieval Europe, you might believe that, like, your mother and your sister and your father and your brother and all these people died and you're the only one left. But you, in your heart, and I mean, there's still people to this day, but it was more common for most people to think they're in heaven. They're in heaven with God who loves them, and they're away from this hard scrabble world. Whereas now we live in a much more comfortable world. Yes, bad things still happen. Things are still tough, but still, we can still have comfortable, safe lives. A lot of us can. And a lot of us either don't believe it at all, or we're just unsure. It's like, well, I hope they're in heaven, but I really don't know, that kind of thing. Whereas, like, for so many of those people, like medieval Europe, like, it was just a fact. It didn't even come down to faith. It was just a known thing. You die. The only thing they were unsure about is if they went to heaven or hell, because they had all sorts of weird rules about that, right? Well, I masturbated once, so maybe I went to hell. Had impure thoughts about a goat.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, like, just the luxury of, like, I could choose to have a hot drink or a cold drink.
Right.
You know, back then it was room temperature or room temperature. You know,
That's very true.
and it's just little things like that we take for granted.
Or just how like sweet things are, right?
Yeah.
Like people like from that long ago would like go bonkers if they could drink pop.
Oh man, there's so much sugar and corn syrup and everything too.
Yeah. And I mean that's bad for us, but I mean it's still very enjoyable.
And flavor.
If you could go back in time and give it to somebody from hundreds of years ago, they'd be like, "This is the best thing I've ever had, ever." You know,
Right.
it's something you can go down the street and get. You know, but to them, it's just like I've never had anything. You know, like to them, that's like a literal nectar of the gods type situation, right?
And it's relatively inexpensive for us. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like I don't know.
And that's another thing that these sci-fi type movies ask, right? They present us with a future that has supposedly even better quality of life for us, but it's like, but there's still a price being paid, and is it worth the price? And it's notable that this movie came out in 2002, so very close to post 9/11 world, where people were starting to wonder about like what was worth giving up and what was worth, you know, to feel safe or to feel secure. What powers were was it good for the government to have? You know,
Good question.
and that's kind of what is going on in this pre-crime thing, right? It's like we live in a safer world, but at the same time, when you really think about it, people are being arrested for something they didn't even do, and now I'm worried of like, you know, is it fallible? Could I just be thinking that maybe I'd do something and they come and arrest me and I was never going to do it? So there, it does have some parallels with like stuff in our own society. And again, if you go to like a post 9/11 thing in the US, they had the Patriot Act, which was like allowing all sorts of surveillance on people. And there were quite a few people that were against this, but there were also a lot of people that just thought, well, we live in such a dangerous world with terrorism, blah, blah, blah. It's worth paying, etc. That's why I'm not going to get on the guns thing or anything like that, but it's the one thing that always confused me the most about like guns versus terrorism and stuff. It's like people in no way were really that upset or freaked out when after 9/11 they changed everything about air travel. They changed everything about it, like instantly.
Yeah.
And yet they won't change. People get really resistant to like changes in laws against guns, even though that racks up death after death after death, way, way more than one incident of terrorism and stuff. I don't know. It's just funny how people react to tragedies and stuff. And I guess that's why I got like so upset when people that like this is just one random example is it was like after one of those gun tragedies not too long ago. What was his name? The astronomer guy.
I'm not sure.
He's always doing TV spots. He's all over the place.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? So Neil deGrasse Tyson very tastelessly like put out a thing about like, you know, even though it was bad that people like were getting shot and stuff, like still statistically people die so much more from this, and this, right? And he didn't seem to understand the difference between that. I mean, I don't know, because right now I could say like I could say, why did Americans get so pissy about 9/11? 3,000 people died. And yet here we are in COVID and 90,000 people have died in the US or something like that. You know, and you'd be say, well, there's a difference between actually going out and, you know, choosing to murder people and something that just happens like an accident or a disease. But some people are just really tone deaf on that. So things like that really bother me. Anyway.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges, but yeah, we were targeted. I mean, it's not like people aren't doing, you know, taking precautions to stop further deaths of this thing, you know. It's kind of unprecedented in how little we know about this disease.
Oh, I know. No, my point is, like, I'm just saying, like, some people just try to use a thing like numbers as an argument.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I'm like, yes, this is far more deadly, but it's not the same as yeah, like, you know, premeditated attacks and murder and stuff, you know?
I mean, the gun control argument is just it's such a round and round and roundabout argument. It's so many different things that are involved with it, and it's not something that there would be an easy solution to anyway. But
in a lot of countries, it was.
I mean, but it's part of our way of living. It's It's the reason why it's the Second Amendment.
From 1770.
It's to prevent our government from overtaking us.
But it absolutely could. There's no way. I mean, the American citizens are more armed than like any other country, but they couldn't stop the American military. The American military is way more armed than
the American military would kill its own citizens over gun control.
No, not over gun control, but it was some other thing. Yeah,
over something else, but not over gun control.
But I just mean, what would be the difference? Whether it was gun control or not, let's say American citizens, something was going to be taken away from them by the government, so they used their guns to defend themselves from the government. Well, that gives the government and the military perfect excuse to kill them. Right? I mean, if you're a soldier and you're supposed to go into a place and do something, and suddenly an armed force opposes you, then that justifies you meeting them with force.
Sure, but it'll never happen. They'll never attack their own people over something as trivial as that.
I know, and that's why I don't get why there's so many people that are worried about it. They think that like they're going to get stormed and have like that's not how these things work.
It's not going to happen because for that reason. No, I mean that's one of the reasons it won't happen.
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying, man. The debate can go on forever.
I mean, people pass laws all the time, and it doesn't involve using force for them.
Yeah, but it's a reason why it's there. It's the reason why people care about it so much. It's there for a reason. There's a reason why people aren't just going to come and try to attack Americans because we're armed to the fucking teeth. Our citizens are armed to the fucking teeth.
I don't think the citizenry really plays into it. I don't think that's something that.
Well, I mean, you go to the UK and what's your biggest worry, getting stabbed by somebody?
Sounds good to me.
I mean, you're not going to get shot because the government won't allow them to have firearms.
So what? You think the UK is vulnerable?
Yeah.
Ah, man, that's no. That's like.
Why does that not make sense? I mean, you're going to a place where even the citizens are armed. We're not talking about the military.
Yeah, but all the citizens do is shoot each other. They're not stopping invaders. They're just killing each other. I guess they could in a theoretical situation of invaders dropping down on them. I don't know, like it's a Red Dawn or something. But I mean, that's not happening. It's everyday day to life, and the citizens are just killing each other. They're not repelling foreign invaders. They're not stopping an oppressive government.
There are no foreign invaders for that reason.
They're murdering each other.
Yeah, but they murder each other with knives, do they not?
I guess here and there, but you can't kill that many people with a knife the way you could just like mow them down with a gun, obviously. I mean, yeah, stabbings happen, and I guess you could run into a crowd and stab a few people before you're pulled down, but you can't, But I mean, you could take like, I don't know, an AK-47 and kill way more people. I mean, obviously that's why people feel safer with guns, because guns are more effective than knives, right?
Yeah.
Your guns are way better at killing people than a knife is.
But I mean, you don't hear about the circumstances where these spree killings were stopped by someone else that was armed, So I mean, you look at.
Well, sure you do. We just had the biggest one in history in my backyard.
That doesn't make the news.
Well, sure as hell. Well, I mean,
anti-gun narrative.
But I mean, he was killed by a cop. I mean, because that's who has the guns. This guy killed a bunch of people. Armed cops killed him.
I mean, you can stop the debate because it'll never happen.
What'll never happen?
Citizens will never lose the right to bear arms.
It's not about the right to bear arms. Lots of countries have the right to bear arms. It's limiting how many, who can get what kind and that sort of thing. I don't think there's a country in the world where the citizens aren't allowed to have a firearm of some sort. It's just about limiting like the sort of guns they can have. Like there's not really any reason for an average citizen living in, say, a suburban area to have a handgun. A handgun doesn't serve any purpose for like hunting or anything like that. It's just for killing each other with. And then you have things like assault weapons, which are just for self-defense from other people with guns. But I mean, that's what you mean. That's why it's a debate that goes on and on and on. You know, it's just I want a gun because he has a gun, because he has a gun, because he has a gun, because he has a gun. I'm worried I need to defend myself because they have guns. You know, so if there weren't guns, they wouldn't have that escalation. But anyway,
again, it's not an argument that's going to end. And the majority of the weapons in America come in illegally from like places like China anyway. So you can talk about that as well.
Well, sure, of course. I'm not saying it's just an American problem, but it's a bigger problem for the U.S. than possibly any other country. I mean, unless you're talking about countries that have like open war going on within them. You know, there's some African republics, you know, where you've got militias and armies running around with guns. But I just mean, as far as like a country with a stable government goes and doesn't have war zones going, I mean, the U.S. would be at the top of the list.
We have war zones.
What?
I don't think we have war zones.
No, that's what I was saying. I was saying as far as countries that don't have those things, because obviously I was discounting places that have like actual war going on. Because you could say, yeah, there might be a bigger gun problem in, say, this African republic, because right now the government's not too shaky, and you've got like you've got 12-year-olds running around with AK-47s and stuff like that. You can't compare that. I'm just saying, as far as countries that don't have that situation goes.
No, I'm not opposed to like a better system of background checks and such.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like people like seem to overreact to the thing because that's what they think it is. Like I don't think most people are talking about like something where it's just like throw out the Second Amendment and no one ever has guns ever for anything. Because no, that's not really what.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there needs to be a list of people that shouldn't be able to own firearms, and there are. You know, felons can't. But, you know, there's a lot of things felons can't do that they still do. Convicted felons, I mean.
Right.
But anyway.
But anyway, I wasn't trying to make it that. I was just saying I get annoyed by the people that have arguments about that sort of thing that just throw statistics and think I think you can take two completely different things and think one trumps another because of statistics. Because as I said, like a lot more people have died from things like car accidents and disease and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean, you know, we shouldn't take something like gun violence seriously. And as I said, I find it a little hypocritical that people think that, well, it was perfectly fine for the government to step in and regulate things and everything when it came to air travel after 9/11, even though not that many people got killed. Because I'm sensitive, because I understand maybe it wasn't that many people, but it's different. It was murder. You know, and murder is different from accidents. Murder is different from disease. That's all I'm saying. I don't like tone deaf people that just throw a bunch of statistics and think, well, this had more deaths, so why aren't you talking about that? Because it's a completely different thing.
You can always find some statistic to support whatever you're trying to say.
Right.
It's always out there somewhere. You can, you know, finagle the numbers.
Right. And the thing is, like, most of these things don't just come down to just numbers because there's a human element involved. And that's why I think somebody like, he's not the only person to make the argument. I just mean somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson pisses me off because he's just basically turning it into a statistic argument and not taking into account, you know, actual humanistic things. That's what annoys me.
What was he comparing it to? Gun violence?
Yeah, no, he was saying something. It was after one of the big shootings, and he was saying, like, you know, how gun violence was a problem, but when you compared it to like the deaths of, you know, some other sort of death, but again, it was something like accidents or something like that. I was like, well, yeah, but that's not really the point. That's what annoys me. Like, he was basically saying, like, we should be way more upset about the fact that like something accidentally happens instead of like people that were, you know, committing premeditated murder. That's what annoys me. Anyway. Because, I mean, obviously, if somebody dies from an accident, you can still get upset about it. But and we should be upset about it. You know, no, I'm not saying anybody that has like somebody that died from some accident, oh, they should just shrug their shoulders. No, But I mean, it's you're still going to feel different than if somebody like came and killed them on purpose. You know, it's a different thing.
You should be more upset at cancer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no point in being upset at cancer. Cancer doesn't have a will or anything. It is what it is, you know. And that's kind of what I mean. And that's kind of what it was. I was annoyed about that tweet. And there's other people that have done the same thing. It's like, well, you know, you guys all make a big deal about all this murder, but what about this? It's like, well, yes, that's bad too, but it's not the same thing as murder, you know. Anyway, I didn't mean to get completely off track there, but no, I wouldn't want you to misunderstand that I meant like, no, let's completely dismantle the Second Amendment and everybody has everything, just has to give it up. No, that's not what I meant. I was just like talking about, you know, limiting the amount of stuff. And like you said, background checks, blah, 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 that sort of thing. I realize some people like to collect, but I just don't think it's that important in the grand scheme of things. There's, you know, there's other stuff you can collect. It's not a big issue.
Yeah. Well, what you should really be mad at is this COVID-19.
I like how people are mad that they have to wear masks some places. Like, that's so terrible. I mean, it's a little weird, but, you know, it's no hardship.
I just don't like that it's a slippery slope being told what to do by the government.
But it's more like you're being we're all just being gently suggested at this point. Like, they can't really enforce dick. You even see the idiots gathering in groups, which you're really not supposed to do. And even they don't get consequences. So it's not like a cop's going to come and tell you have to do this or that. And I mean, if stores have a policy about masks, that's their business. They can. Stores can always have policies. I mean, even if this wasn't going on, they could have that policy.
Right now in LA County, it's mandatory mask. Like, I don't think you can leave your house without a mask.
Must be really bad there.
No, it's not, though. That's the thing. It's not that bad at all in LA. They've actually managed it really well. They jumped on it really early, but they're the ones that are like the most.
I guess they're just worried because LA is so densely populated. Yeah. I mean, I get it to a certain extent.
It's not, though. It's not populated like New York is, you know?
No, probably not. Well, New York's really bad.
Like density.
New York's one of the worst places.
Yeah.
But anyway, here, like I said, I don't know any places that are making you. And I'd say only about 25% of the people I see wear masks, which is fairly low. I think it should be higher. Really? As I said, when I go out, I don't wear it walking because I'm not near anybody. When I go in stores, I put it on because I'm trying to show the people that work there that I respect their safety, because they're the poor bastards that every day have to go in and see person after person after person in front of them. I don't have to do that. So I put on a mask so I can at least show them that I respect that. But out walking, no, it's fine. No one's close to me, so.
Pretty much everyone I see has a mask on.
That's pretty good. No, they're not doing enough here. And here's another problem about how weird our weather's been, and Canadians in general is like when this all started, all Canadians were good-natured about it because the weather was shit anyway. But we're so desperate for nice weather that now it's just like, yeah, I know everything's still in effect, but it's so nice out, and we had such a bad winter. So that's a real problem here. Is like people aren't obeying rules and stuff because they're just like, yeah, well, it's nice out, you know, that kind of thing.
They're fucking spreaders, is what they are.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Fucking spreaders.
Just
line them up and just execute them all.
Yeah. Well, the thing about those people is they take themselves out, really. I mean, people, what was really funny about those spring break-in idiots was they're like, only old people get it. Then half of them got it, and they're all barely 20. So they won't die, probably, and I don't want anybody to die. I'm just saying.
That's the problem. And they go visit their grandmother, and then their grandmother dies.
Yeah. And then someone's like, well, Grandma had to die for the economy.
Yeah. She had to die, but goddamn, we had a good party. Man, we partied hard in Panama Beach.
Yeah, I saw a video of that. Florida has become a parody of itself.
Yeah. We'll just see if it gets worse there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give them credit for that. At least we can just use them to judge things. See how many of them drop dead.
Somebody's got to do it.
I know.
But
I
I
just
mean,
feel bad for the people there that didn't elect themselves for it. They're like, wait, this wasn't my idea.
I was the one that voted for everyone has to wear a mask.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying though? Like I don't really like to be told I have to be this, that, and the other, because I was doing the right thing to begin with before there was any sort of, mandatory anything.
Well, that's why it's always annoying in situations like this, right? You're following the rules, but there's a bunch of idiots who don't, and they mess everything up.
I mean, tomorrow it'll be, now, we're limited on the, amount of food we can buy, or, you can have this, or you can have that,
Well, we've been limited in that for some things because they're running out. Like, for instance, like for some of the pasta and stuff, they would like limit 2 per customer.
Or you can, only go outside between these hours, and
No, we don't have we don't have any curfew. They've had curfews in a lot of countries, though. Thailand has a curfew.
Why though?
I'm not really sure.
I mean, why are places closing so early now when they weren't earlier? Like, I just don't understand what that has to do with anything.
Yeah, I don't know what like the time has to do with anything either. Because I was annoyed because you know how I sometimes go to a 24-hour grocery store. Like that hasn't had 24-hour hours since it started.
Right.
And I'm thinking why? Like how does the time affect it? I mean,
if they kept it 24 hours, that means there could be less people in the store at one time.
They could spread it out better. Exactly. Right. So yeah, I don't get shortened hours either.
Stuff like that doesn't make any sense.
I'm not saying extend hours. I'm just saying don't change the hours. Don't shorten them. Because I said I have total respect for these people that have to work at retail jobs and put themselves on the line every day. But I just mean limiting the hours doesn't make sense. You got shifts and stuff to swing this out. I'm not calling to overwork the people and give them more. I'm just saying it should just be the same because, like you said, it spreads it out and they can limit how many people in the store more. So yeah, I found that annoying.
But they're also getting less wages because of it. They're not able to work as much.
Yeah, so you think they would want to work more? I don't know. I have no solutions economically. Obviously, I'm completely at sea when that stuff happens.
I don't know.
I have no suggestions or answer for economic stuff. I don't even know. It seems to differ province by province, country by country. I don't know. I mean, here I know small businesses are been given a certain amount of money and families get a certain amount of money. Although, again, I know I bitch that I don't understand why if you have kids, you get more money. Kids don't cost more money if you keep them at home. Yes, if you have kids, they cost more money. But keeping them home doesn't cost more money. You still have to feed them regardless.
Yeah. I mean, I go to the stores at those odd hours because I don't want to be around people.
Yeah, exactly. And now I can't do it.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm annoyed by that too.
Yeah, like I don't go anywhere really. That's why I don't. I mean, I wash my hands and I don't really go anywhere. So that's pretty.
I just go boring places. I haven't been downtown in about a month.
I mean, everything's closed, right?
Yeah, everything's closed. But they're open. Some of the public places have been open as long as you don't gather there. Like I haven't been in there, but I think the public gardens are open. I was like, I never thought it made sense to close them in the first place. Because I'm not talking about a beach. This is just a public gardens. You just walk through it.
Right.
I mean, as long as you're not having a big wedding party there, like, yeah, no problem. So I figured the boardwalk is probably open because you just walk along the boardwalk. Don't congregate, just keep walking, which is what I do anyway. I'm alone anyway.
I saw.
If there's a big crowd, I'm annoyed by it. I'm like, I don't want to be in this.
This was a week or two ago when they opened up the beaches finally somewhere. I don't know where it was, but beaches were open. There's no like sunbathing, no swimming, none of the leisure stuff. It was only open basically for exercise, like running, walking, and you could fish, but no chairs.
Huh.
So
again, that sounds really hard to enforce.
But I mean, so you could sit on the ground, I guess.
I doubt they enforce it. I bet you those beaches are full of people doing all the things they're technically not supposed to be doing.
It didn't say no sitting; it said no chairs. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, you could sit. And I don't see why you can't have chairs as long as you space them out. I have a chair, and 6 feet over there is another chair, right? You'd have your chairs, you just distance.
It just seems like people are making up like weird rules because they can.
Yeah.
You can run as long as you're 6 feet away from
So many of
everyone.
these rules can't be enforced anyway. Even the good ones, which is what kind of bothers me, because I think there's some important rules, and yet they're having a lot of trouble enforcing the important rules, because some people are just like, I don't care, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do everything. But no, I've never been... There's nothing here where they're specifically really telling you what to do exactly. I mean, if you got to line up to get in a store, you got to line up to get in a store. But some of them you don't, because last time I went to Walmart, there was no line, they just let you in. But this close store, my superstore that I go to, that still has a line. So I don't really know what the difference is.
Are they limiting the number of people in the store?
Yeah, they still are, but I guess maybe they allow more than they used to, because there's almost never a line anymore. I don't know. Maybe it's just the time of day I've gone. I have no idea. But like you said, I don't go anywhere interesting. It was a big highlight to go to Walmart, and I didn't even really have anything to get there, so I just tried to see if they had any of the classic Transformers, which they didn't. And I was like, no Transformers. And I did take the bus home, and I said I would not take the bus during this, but it wasn't too bad because almost nobody was on it. Basically what it is the whole front section, you don't go in the front door at all, you don't go anywhere near the driver. And they have seats that you're not supposed to sit in that they have marked off. And I guess it would be a problem if a lot of people were there, but there was only 4 or 5 people on the bus, so I didn't feel too bad. And even in normal times, I never touch anything on the bus anyway. Those people that are holding onto the poles and stuff, I never do that. I never did that under any circumstances. So I guess it wasn't too bad. So the possibility remains that I could go further if I decide to use the bus. And the bus is all free during this time too, for some reason.
That's good.
Yeah. So I have a bus pass, but I don't have to show that. You don't even get on anywhere near the driver. You just get on in one of the middle or back doors. So I might do the bus again sometime if I really feel the need to get somewhere far away. As I said, I'm getting out of shape because the walking is I'm feeling like my calves burn. I'm what's wrong with me? And I know there's nothing stopping me from just doing an ordinary walk every day, but I don't know. The difference, I guess, is the other thing about this that I kind of like is that there's plenty of times in my normal life where I don't go anywhere and I feel guilty about it. This is I don't go anywhere and I can feel good about it. I'm I'm doing my duty. I didn't go anywhere, So I get kind of addicted to that. It's all I did today was play Final Fantasy VII, and that's okay. Anyway, as we said before in an earlier thing, it's still too tough to tell what the next little while is going to be like. If we're getting close to things changing, if it's going to get worse or better, it's difficult. And I understand why a lot of people are stressed and stuff, but people are expressing it in the wrong ways. And some people are just showing how selfish they are during this, which is annoying. Because it's okay to be worried and uncertain about the future, but it's another thing to just be annoyed that you can't do some stupid self-indulgent thing that everyone can't do, It's who are you complaining to? I can't do it either. Why are you bitching to me that you can't do this? I can't do it either. There's not some secret group of people that are getting to do all the things you can't do. That's how some of these people seem to be acting. They seem to think that there's some special group or cabal that is doing all the stuff. We're not allowed to, but they're doing it. They're not. No one's doing it. We're not supposed to. But some people are just so selfish. That's all they can think of. And they need an enemy. They need somebody to blame, right? As we said, be mad at Corona, but that doesn't work, right? That doesn't work for people. They can't be mad at a virus.
Be mad at Chinese people.
Yeah, so exactly. So they have, so they find outlets like that. There's some group, the government, the Chinese people, stuff like that, that they have to demonize and attack.
Dude, I don't know. I don't even know the damn cause of this thing yet. Whatever. This came out of a lab, came out of wherever, wet markets. I don't even know.
Yeah. A big misconception is that we don't have wet markets here in North America. We do. A farmer's market is still a wet market. But it is true that there are ones that are a lot less hygienic. And that's what would be nice to get cracked down on is the wet markets in parts of the world where less hygienic stuff is going on. But a lot of people don't seem to understand. A lot of people think wet market is some strange foreign thing in other lands. It's no, we have wet markets.
But I don't know. It's so much.
It definitely wasn't made in a lab from what I've read, because what every scientist I've read says about it is just that, unless over the last 100 years of talking about viruses and virology, that's all been like classified too. Like this is way more sophisticated than anything humans even know how to make. Like we've never come up with anything that's this effective for spreading. In all our years of biological germ warfare and stuff, we've never come up with something that was this good at spreading. So that's why they say like it couldn't be man-made, because we've never made anything nearly this effective for spreading.
But I hear the same thing. I hear it can't be man-made. It's not man-made, and then it is man-made. I don't know. I don't know what's real.
I believe that's one thing I don't believe for a second. It's man-made.
Awfully big coincidence.
I don't know. I mean, it's been about 100 years since we had anything like this happen on this scale.
But anyway, you want to go ahead and wrap up here?
We're having a pretty good run. Yeah. No, I wanted to talk about something else before we wrap up. I mean, unless you're talked out, I know we blabbed about a lot of extra stuff and got into some themes that weren't. But I was just gonna say, okay. So I watched a show on Prime, a fairly new show called Hunters, which I'm sure people have heard of, which takes place in 1977. It's about a kid. He's like 19. He's a Jewish kid, and his grandmother gets murdered, and he winds up getting tied into this whole group of people that are like a secret group of like Nazi hunters that are hunting, Nazis that escaped after the war that are still active in the United States, right? And it has a certain amount of basis in reality, of course, right? So I'm just going to skip past that for a second to something that just occurred to me a little later. This is unrelated, but I can make it related. So a few days ago, I watched the third Transformers movie, Dark of the Moon, which I consider actually pretty good as Transformers live-action movies go, because they're not really good, but I think it's okay. Now, nobody would call Dark of the Moon historical fiction, because it's a fantastic sci-fi fantasy movie. But like a lot of fantastic sci-fi fantasy movies, it still takes place in, quote, the real world, right? It's a real world, except Transformers and shit exist, right? So they did tie some history into it. I had completely forgotten because I hadn't watched the movie in years. But the movie opens by showing that, I don't know, after some battle on Cybertron or something like that, like some ship leaves and gets like shot down and crashes on the Earth's moon, right? It crashes on the Earth's moon. And I don't remember when it happens, but sometime in like the early 60s, it shows that people at NASA detect that some foreign object is on the moon, right? And in this universe, historically fiction speaking, they tell the president, who's John F. Kennedy at the time, and that's why he gets behind the space race, because he thinks it's really important that we find out what this thing is on the moon is before the Russians, right? So then they jump ahead, and it's 1969, and they show the official moon landing with Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, and the guy that actually landed, the first guy, Neil Armstrong, right?
Okay.
And they intercut like some of the actual footage from the real thing and some of the audio of it, right? And the whole thing then is they do this thing where it's like, okay, the TV broadcast is over, cameras are cut. Now we'll do what we're really here to do, right? And they go and they have this much time to go across, and they find the ship and they recover stuff, right? And to make this even more legit, later when they're doing this thing about how like this is all tied into like the Decepticons and Autobots, and turns out the government did know something because that's what the moon landing was all about, blah, 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 right? They're having this discussion. Buzz Aldrin, the real Buzz Aldrin, is there playing himself.
Yeah.
The fictionalized version of himself, where in this version of reality, Buzz Aldrin's second man on the moon, he and Neil Armstrong went and found a Decepticon ship, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Buzz Aldrin probably got a kick out of it. It's kind of funny, right? It's just this other reality where this is what happened. So that's historical fiction in a way. But that's not going to bother anybody. But the difference is when you're dealing with stuff like World War II and things like that. And here's what I want to talk about is the line of where historical fiction, where it needs to be completely authentic and where it doesn't. For instance, I've talked about, and a lot of people have the same complaint, that the movie Pearl Harbor is a really shitty movie, has a lot of mistakes. And one of the things that's annoying about it is because it's a movie that really is supposed to be trying to be historically accurate, right? The main characters in the love story are fictional. They're made up. But it's been the backdrop of events and places and things that really happened, right? Specifically, the attack on Pearl Harbor. Now, a lot of the attack looks good, but what it gets a lot of flack for is it shows the Japanese doing things they did not do. One of the things, just to make them look more evil, is they show them bombing hospitals. They did not do this. That's historically recorded. So I have a real problem with that because this movie is trying to be historically accurate, and just to be more dramatic, it's showing the Japanese committing war crimes they didn't commit, and that bothers me. So this swings us around to this. What? So it doesn't bother you?
No, it's I never really thought about it before.
Okay, so it bothers me and it bothers a lot of people, but it's walking that line, right? Because sometimes it's a fictional version of a historical event, and sometimes it's okay to change things around and throw things around. But I don't like that, I don't know. But anyway, so here's the thing with this. Anyway, it bothers a lot of people. It bothers me, and then you get the whole argument about like where it's okay to make changes and not when you're dealing with an actual historical event, right? So that comes into this show, which of course deals with the Holocaust and World War II and etc. Right? So I'm not going to give too much stuff away, but there's a scene. So one of the things is there's often some flashbacks to Auschwitz. Auschwitz was a real, a real place, a real death camp. Now, the director and writer of the show was trying his best to make things, really authentic and stuff. And he said he was also mindful of the fact that he was inserting, fictional characters into something that really happened. He said that's why, like, for instance, when I showed like the tattoos they had, I made sure the numbers were higher than any numbers that were recorded at Auschwitz, so that nobody would think I was, stealing their story or painting over. Like, so these were fictional numbers that didn't exist and stuff. But there was still some stuff he did that bothered a lot of people, including the Auschwitz Memorial Museum, which tweeted some angry things. Specifically, there's a scene where he's talking about a Nazi commander, a fictional Nazi commander, one who wasn't in real life, that said he was really into chess, and he found out one of the Jews there was a chess master, so he wanted to help him use him with chess. And what he actually did was he took a whole bunch of prisoners and he took them out with an armed escort to this faraway place, and he made a big human-sized chessboard, and he actually made them play chess with all the Jewish prisoners as human pieces. And he gave them all knives. So anytime it was time to take another person, he made them kill them. Of course, this never happened. This has never happened in real life, right? And the Auschwitz Memorial Museum was very upset about this, and they thought that this was something that was trivializing something that really happened by showing something fairly fantastical. And it just made me think, I really don't know how to feel about it, because I understand their point. I do understand their point. But I also think, even though they're showing something that, didn't happen per se, they are showing something that was at least similar, and some Nazis were capable of doing. We do know that some Nazi guards at various camps did play sadistic games with various prisoners. Now this game is very literal, an actual game of chess. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that was really in bad taste? The Auschwitz Memorial Museum was so upset about it. They think that they really want that there won't be a second season of the show, because they think they're trivial. And they said it would have been acceptable if they had made up just a fake camp in the beginning and just said, during World War II, there are these camps, and this is going to focus on this camp, which actually in real life didn't exist. And then you can say whatever you want. But they were really upset that they specifically did use Auschwitz, a real death camp, and they had these events happen. And I guess they thought because a human chess thing is somewhat fantastical, it was kind of trivializing things. And they also said it gave ammunition to Holocaust deniers. I don't know about that.
Fuck that. Holocaust deniers are fucking idiots, man. Fuck
yeah,
them.
Exactly. We really have to worry that much about them? Do they have? It's not like Holocaust deniers have a lot of credibility in society.
No, they're like flat earthers,
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. I really side on the side of fiction there, because there's plenty of stuff. There's plenty of fiction written, what if Germany won the war? Or what if the, Confederacy won the Civil War?
Right.
And it's not, I don't think it's any sort of malice intended. It's fiction, and you go into Hunters knowing it's a fictional story.
Right. And I guess the difference here is this isn't speculative fiction. It's not like a what if. It's except it has this happened, except a what if. This is a little bit different, I guess. And I'm pretty much on your side too, but it does make me wonder about my own, because I can't figure out what my own rules are for. Because like I said, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world that they did that in, say, Pearl Harbor. but it just seemed like they didn't need to do it. They could just show the attack as it happened. It would be dramatic enough. You didn't need to add something that didn't happen, especially not if it's going to offend certain people, because I'm sure there are certain people, even for maybe Japanese people, they're just like, okay, I know that Japan did some wrong in the war, but they didn't do that, that kind of thing. So I can't really decide where I come down on this issue either. Because the other thing, too, is there's tons of crazy fiction about World War II and the Holocaust, too. But I guess it comes down to tone, too. Because, for instance, if you read the Marvel comics, they say World War II was definitely a thing, definitely happened. The Holocaust happened. But there was also, a division of the Nazis called Hydra, run by the Red Skull, and they did all sorts of crazy, wacky things. They did evil things, but they did a lot of crazy, wacky things too. They did a lot of stuff that was like tied into the occult and stuff like that. And nobody bats an eye at that because they say, well, the Marvel universe is its own thing. It's it's not historical fiction. It's a version of our world. It's an alternate version of our world where some events were the same and some were different. So I don't have a problem. But I guess I do sort of see the point with Hunters, because Hunters is trying to be really real world in everything it does, and then it makes this sort of sharp departure from reality. But I don't know. I don't think, like you said, I don't think there's any malice of intent there. The guy said, like, he really did intend to show things as very realistically and viscerally and show the impact and the tragedy and all that. I don't necessarily think that showing an event like the human chess game, which did not happen, necessarily messes everything up and trivializes it. But I don't know.
Do you remember that HBO show that was supposed to come out that was about something to do with slavery and I forget the exact. It was something similar to that though.
Oh, like, that is the speculative thing, right? That was like if the Civil War was won by the other side, and somehow even into the 20th century, slavery remained legal. That was the show.
I think that could be interesting, though. I mean, we all know it's not real.
Yeah, no, I'm all for that too. And like I said, especially since it hasn't even come out yet. But yeah, there are all sorts of people all over that saying that, oh, this is just like fan fiction for white supremacists. And I'm like, you really think so? You really think they're not going to show it as a totally negative thing?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the show is going to show that, the people that do it are fairly bad and evil. They're going to show the people suffering it as heroic and sympathetic. And they're probably going to show people that, maybe that are white or whatever, that see that it is wrong and try to do something about it. I think all that is very much is going to happen on that show, So that's another thing I don't agree with, which is I'll give the Holocaust or the Auschwitz Museum credit for one thing. They watched the show, then they formed their opinion on it. These are people that are just hearing about what a show is going to be about and already saying, no, cancel it, don't make it. And I think that's ridiculous.
I mean,
you said, it has potential. It could be a good show, and it could actually, it could make some important points, and it could, it has potential to actually do something positive. We can't just judge it before it even happens.
I mean, I think the problem comes along when people stop reading history and just watch shows like that thinking that's what happened. I mean, if people are properly educated, I don't think we have a problem here.
Right, and I don't think it's incumbent on a show, let's say this show. So this is a show that's speculative history. It's a what-if universe. What if, the Civil War ended differently? What if somehow slavery in the United States continued in the 20th century? I don't think it's their responsibility that people watching it have to know about the real history. That's on us. That's on us. That's not the show. The show shouldn't have to have a disclaimer that says, blah, 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 here's what really happened. No, people need to educate themselves on these things. So no, I don't think that's the show's responsibility. So yeah, but yeah, the whole idea of people flipping out about what a show is maybe going to be or what it's about before it even happens, that's not right. That pisses me off. So I'll give the Auschwitz Museum one thing. They didn't just say, oh, we don't like the idea of it. They actually watched the show when it existed, and then they had an opinion on it, which is fair. Even if I don't agree with it, at least that's fair. But to just, hear about a show that's going to exist and already flipping out about it.
I mean, I get their argument. I understand the backlash, and it is good they watched it before they formed their opinion. It's just, I mean, it's fiction. It's intended to be fiction. I don't think they downplayed, the horrific shit that happened at Auschwitz.
Right. They didn't at all. And I don't think, and I know I guess they didn't actually see that written in the tweet, but I guess maybe their argument is showing something like a human chess game is, sort of outlandish and it's trivialized. And I don't think so. I mean, I watched it and it was very emotionally done.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was goofy.
I mean, it doesn't seem that far-fetched either, really.
And that's why I said it's not. I know it didn't happen, but it's not that far fetched. It's a more elaborate, but it is true that there are real documented accounts of Nazis playing sadistic games with prisoners, where they played with their lives. They decided who lived, who died, just for the fun of it. That did happen. Just the fact that they decided to make a chess game out of one of it, I don't think that trivializes it.
I just feel like people are looking for things to be outraged by. And like Inglourious Bastards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they play that like it's what happened. I mean, they don't say this didn't happen. So, I mean, if you were someone who had no, idea of what happened in World War II, you might believe, they burned down a theater with, Hitler and a bunch of Nazis.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of stories, but it's kind of like wishful thinking, right? Where like the good guys managed to kill Hitler during the war. And I mean, that's not what happened. Sadly, it's not what happened, but I don't think it's offensive to show a story where it's like, what if it did happen? Just like we've shown the other side of it, like what if the Nazis won? We've shown that and stuff too,
I think that's interesting as hell, man. To think what could have happened,
Exactly.
It's.
And I give credit to the show too, the Hunter show, because it's not shying away from some very painful absolute truths. Like one of the things that gets acknowledged in the show and is a big part of the show is Operation Paperclip, which is 100% real, which, I mean, the American public did only found out about, like, for sure, like, not even that long ago. And it's not, like, a great part of, American history to have to accept that happened, that their own government did that. But the show is showing it, So they're not shying away from that, and they're not making a silly joke out of it. But again, for dramatic purposes, the Nazis in this show, of course, are a lot more organized, and, they have a lot more stuff going on. Because in real life, the Nazis that escaped after World War II and went into other countries, I'm not saying none of them ever did anything bad for the rest of their lives. I'm just saying, for the most part, what they did was they lay low, and they hid. And obviously, for the purposes of drama in this show, these Nazis are more organized, and they've got plans, and they're trying to carry them out. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's kind of the point of the show, right? It's like, we're not just hunting Nazis to punish them for what they did in World War II. We're also trying to stop them because they're still trying to do bad shit. And that's fine for a show, I think.
So that's the premise of the show, that Nazis still exist, present day?
Well, I mean, 1977.
Okay.
That way, the Nazis wouldn't be too old, right? And not to mention the Nazis also, the idea that, and this is fictional, although maybe there's some real thing. There's also some people that are younger that are just like part of it. They weren't Nazis during World War II, but they've been, pulled into it now. So there's some younger people. There's even actually one of the main bad guys. He isn't even German. He's an American, but he's like really into the Nazi cause, and he's one of their agents and stuff like that. No, but I mean, it is true that, even now, but in the 70s, there were plenty of Nazis in other countries, including the US, including Canada and stuff. But the difference between that and like the show is the show has them as, there's a whole group of them where they're somewhat organized and they've got plans and they're trying to do this and that. And as far as I know, there's not really any instances of that. Like in real life, the Nazis that got away with it, they were just happy enough to get away with it. They hid and tried to start new lives and keep their heads down. But this is a show that wants some drama, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Actually, I'll say one more thing. Speaking of actual historical events, so what else happened in the U.S. in the summer of '77? Well, the New York City had that crazy blackout, right? Son of Sam killed some people during it. It was when hip-hop arguably got a big boost because people were able, during the looting, to steal some very sophisticated DJ equipment. But anyway, the '77 blackout's a big part. In this, for the show's purposes, it was actually caused by something the Nazis did. And I think that's okay. It's fine. It's not offensive or in bad taste. It's just part of this show. So, but it did make me think, like, so yeah, my answer is no, I don't mind the liberties they took. And I don't think they made a joke out of it or made it silly. But it just leaves me asking the question, there are still plenty of shows and movies that are about historical events where when they do change things or leave things out or get things wrong, it really does bother me. So I don't know. But I can't really come up with a rule or a line.
Can you think of an example?
Well, like I said, the example that really bothered me about World War II was the thing they did with Pearl Harbor. I didn't like them showing the Japanese doing something they didn't do. I felt like Pearl Harbor's, devastating enough. It doesn't need a bunch of extra stuff thrown onto it.
I've never seen that movie.
It's bad. I mean, the actual Pearl Harbor moment is really well filmed, and it's probably the best film and we have that shows, you know, a dramatization of it. But as you might expect by reading what you know about it, like it's completely ruined by this terrible love triangle story with Ben Affleck and whoever else is in it. It's Kate. No, not Kate Winslet. It doesn't matter who they are. Yeah. It's really bad melodrama.
Figured.
And it's super long. Like it would probably take you 10 years to watch it. It's really long. And it's one of those long movies that feels long.
Yeah.
Like so.
Some people like that movie, man.
It's not 100% terrible, but it really highlights just like how limited Michael Bay is as a filmmaker. Because Michael Bay was like briefly before he just realized that making like Transformers movie was his calling. He really wanted to be taken more seriously and make something that was like, you know, not just a silly action movie and this was his attempt to be like more of a guy like Spielberg. But no, it's not quite on the same level as Saving Private Ryan.
If you look at the last decade, I bet Michael Bay's movies made more money than Spielberg's movies.
Oh, way more.
And that's sad.
Last decade. Yeah, it is, I guess. But I mean, I'm also of the crowd. We talked about this before when we did like a special on Spielberg on the Sausage Factory. It's just like, I mean, he had like such a long, sustained era of really great movies. Like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world in the last like decade. The movies aren't as good anymore. I mean, nobody stays on top forever. And they're not even necessarily bad movies. I'm just not interested in. Like, I'm just not interested in War Horse. I'm just not interested in, you know, whatever his last 5 or 6 were. I'm not saying they're bad. They're just not really what I want to watch.
I didn't see Lincoln.
Me neither.
I didn't. I saw the one with was it just called The Bridge or something like that?
Did he do The Bridge? And did he do Bridge of Spies? Who did Bridge of Spies?
Bridge of Spies, that was him. I did see that one. It was okay. And I didn't see the one about like the I can't even think of the name of it. He did a bunch of films that just didn't do well. I mean, they look fine, but
yeah. As you said, I mean, obviously you would call it a decline, but to me, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really reflect on him as a filmmaker. I mean, he has one of the best resumes ever. So there's nothing like, you know, it's kind of like when you have like those UFC guys that are like legends, and then they have like a bunch of losses. For most people, that doesn't like taint them in their eyes. They're just like, well, they're still legends. And it's kind of the same thing with Spielberg. So yeah, maybe he made some less good, maybe even mediocre movies, but to me, that doesn't really, you know.
I don't know that the quality of the movies was less. I think it was the subject matter that was less appealing.
That's really what it is for me, because I just haven't been interested in watching them, right? It's not like, oh, Spielberg's lost his touch. It's more like, oh, he's just making movies that are about stuff I'm not particularly interested in.
He's making movies he wants to make, and then he does a Ready Player One, you know?
Yeah.
That's like
Ready Player One was certainly better. I was expecting to really dislike that movie. It's okay.
It's not bad.
It's not really for people like our age. It's for people younger than us.
I just feel like it kind of lacks a little bit of substance. It's really more style over substance. It's just, you know, nonstop references, nonstop nostalgia. It's like, I know that. I remember that. That's this. You know, I had that toy. I had that car. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a DeLorean, man. That's awesome. You know. And
I almost forgot that he was the one that did it, but yeah. And I mean, it fits his style. It's really, you know, he knows how to handle those big scenes and the technology. That's all. You know, that's all his wheelhouse.
It may have been you that said, you know, how he got around the copyright of all those characters. You know, probably it was just the fact that he was Spielberg that did it. You know.
Yeah, it was the same thing with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, he just had that clout. He just convinced people to loan it.
Yeah.
They were like, okay.
Let's make a new rating where I can put my movies out for children that are a little bit more risque.
Yes, sir, Mr. Spielberg. Whatever you say, Mr. Spielberg. You know, it's funny. Speaking of people like living longer these days, you know his father's still alive?
Is he really? Wow.
So in 1998, Steven Spielberg felt it was really important to make Saving Private Ryan, Matt Damon. Saving Private Ryan, right? And it was pretty good timing because you know, that generation, they were getting pretty old. And his father was part of that generation. His father was 82 years old then. Now his father is 103.
Holy shit.
Still around.
Was his dad in the concentration camps? He's not that old.
I don't think he was in the concentration camps, but he did do something in World War II.
I only say that because I know he's a big proponent of the. He's created some museum dedicated to
Holocaust. Oh yeah, I mean, he made Schindler's List, right? And Schindler's List was, such a personal movie for him, and he basically felt he had to make it. Like it was like his responsibility. It's a really great movie.
Sure.
Not light watching. It's depressing because it's not so I guess that's the difference, right? Like if Schindler's List had a scene where the Nazis were playing human chess, I can understand people being mad. But this show, while it is serious, it still sort of has like an adventure comic booky type vibe to it. In fact, I didn't mention the main character. He works in a comic book store, which is a fairly new phenomenon in 1977. And there are the episodes every once in a while have weird surreal sequences that just are kind of like weird like cutaways that are not reality, that are kind of comic booky. So to me, I think that's another thing that sort of gives it a pass, is the tone. Because yeah, it's serious, it's dealing with the Holocaust in a serious matter, but it's still not Schindler's List. So I think it's okay. I don't think it's terrible that it has that thing. As I said, this whole thing about the Nazis like being active and having plots and stuff in the U.S. in the 70s, that's not true either, but I don't think that's offensive. You said it's more like a what if. It's like, a lot of Nazis did get away. What if they were more organized? What if they did have the balls to do something? That's kind of what this is, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I guess it's like a case-by-case basis type thing, and tone probably does play a large part of it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the best answer I can come up with, because I was saying it is true that for some of these historical things, sometimes when they change things or whatever, it really does bother me. But other times, I think it's okay. And yeah, like you said, it's more case by case tone. Like I can't. There's not really a hard and fast rule I can come up with. I mean, I hope they do a second season. I actually, as much as I just thought, okay, I'll put this on to kill time, it eventually sucked me in over time. I'd like to see a second season. The first season has somewhat of a cliffhanger. I'd like to see that where they go from it.
Yeah, you're making me interested.
I think you'd probably like it. I'm not saying you'd love it or it's the greatest thing or you'd dig. And I realize it's hard to recommend anything because there's so much content, right? If I'm not going, it's awesome, you'll love it, right? So I don't know what to say because I can't really say, oh yeah, it's totally worth your time when there's so many things, right? So I don't know. But I liked it.
Yeah, I need a new show to watch. I've powered through most stuff I've been watching lately.
I guess I like that I didn't know most of the actors except for Al Pacino. And Al Pacino's so buried in his like old Jewish thing routine that you kind of even can forget it's him, sort of.
Oh, he's a Jew.
Oh, yeah. So it's like, even though not everybody on the team is a Jew.
Al Pacino.
But he's kind of like the leader of the team.
Hooah! Where's my yarmulke?
I hope there's takes of him doing that on set, so I can find somewhere.
Mashugana. No.
Anyway, maybe you can watch the first episode and tell me what you think at least, and see what we think from there. But anyway, we will circle around back to finish off on Minority Report. I probably would have wanted to say a little bit more about determinism versus free will and stuff, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Political and legal stuff got bogged down, yeah, so. Still, I was going to say, I don't think it's Spielberg's last great movie, but it's one of his last really good ones. Speaking of historical and World War II type related, although it's not entirely, but Nazi hunting, kind of, although it's not the same as Nazis. I've talked about the 2005 movie that nobody else likes, Munich, which isn't about Nazis, but it's about war crimes. It's about, hunting down guys for, well, not even war crimes, but terrorism, right? It was about the attack of the Munich Olympics in '72 and the Mossad agents that went after them. That might be one of his most grim and serious movies, besides, of course, besides Schindler's List. And it actually is one of the only, might be the only Spielberg one I can think of that has a sustained sex scene, like we said, this movie, there's like sex for about 2 seconds and they pan away. This movie actually has a real full sex scene, not like super graphic or anything like that, but not something you see in Spielberg movies. But yeah, I think Munich might be the last one he did I like.
Isn't Eric Bana, isn't he in that?
Yeah, and he's bland and boring, and probably they should have gotten somebody better, but it is what it is. I don't think you would like Munich. I think you would find it slow.
I've seen it, yeah.
I don't think I liked it when I first saw it. It's something that I've come around to in recent years, and I've watched it again. I appreciate a lot of the historic detail.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't really aware of all of that, the Munich Olympics when I watched the film.
And I guess I like it for some of the reasons I like this thing, in that it does raise some serious ethical questions, right? Like, is what they did really justice? Can it really be satisfying? Does it really solve anything? Is kind of what you come out of Munich, and the movie doesn't give you answers, right? It just sort of leaves the people, and they're kind of broken and hurt by what happens. We talk about trauma a lot, and this movie does different things. It has an interesting thing with trauma in this movie, because it's sort of about trying to prevent trauma, but then, which is an interesting take, a sci-fi take, of course. But yeah, just to sum up, I am a big fan of this movie. I've liked it more that I watch it. It's one of those roles where it doesn't really matter if it's Tom Cruise. I could see some other sort of age-appropriate A-list style actor in the main role, but Cruise is fine. It's not like he's doing crazy overacting or anything stupid in it. He's fine. I like the world, as we said. I'm a big fan of Cyberpunk. But it does get kind of exhausted. It's nice to see that this is like a post-Cyberpunk, a slightly different thing, a different take, because it feels a bit more fresh. The society that they show you is interesting, because sometimes when you see those Cyberpunk things, you have it all figured out in like the first 5 seconds. Like, okay, this is a really terrible, oppressive place. The government cracks down on everybody, or everything's just run by a big corporation. Like, this shows like more closer to our reality type of world where, yeah, things are getting more oppressive, things are getting more invasive, but life on the whole is still reasonably good. And we're not all completely crushed by things like disease or pollution and stuff. It shows a fairly habitable world that's not so bad, but you see the cracks in it, especially with some of the stuff that the cops do. But It's funny, like, just thinking about like how invasive like advertising and stuff has become. That's really, I think, the main thing in that show that is really like our world now. Remember, it shows him walking around, and like all the billboards react to him personally. Like, they scan him and they're like, "Hi, John Anderton, would you like to buy some khakis?" and stuff like that. Like that, we're almost there. We're like this close to that right now.
Yeah. Personalized advertising is getting so bad.
I mean, I hate that you have to have an account for fucking everything. I don't like that every time I shop at a store, like, they look up my account and they tell me my name. I'm like, yes, that's me. I'm not a criminal, and I'm not a superhero or a vigilante. I don't have a secret identity. But there's a part of me that just doesn't like that every place I go, my full name is like revealed to everyone. Like that should not be a necessary part of our society. Again, I don't want to hide. I'm not doing anything. I just feel like every interaction I have doesn't have to be with somebody that knows my full name. Like, there's no need for that. And yet it seems like more and more that's what it is at every store. I buy this and they're like, "Oh, what's your email?" I'm like, "You got it on file." And then they say my name. I'm like, "Yes, that's me." And I hate how like all my movie tickets have my full name on it. Again, I'm not doing anything illicit or illegal or secret. I'm seeing a movie, but I still feel like I shouldn't have to have my goddamn name on it. I don't know why. But
I agree. But I mean, everything's, but people are slowly becoming desensitized to
just giving up privacy and
privacy. Exactly. I think.
Now we've got a generation where they think what's normal is just like sharing everything about themselves, because they think it makes them special and important. But like, here's my life. Follow Instagram. It'll have every detail of what I do, and you need to follow it. Like,
what I ate for breakfast. This is what I ate for lunch. This is what I ate for dinner. And they get all that specialized advertising based on your search habits.
Yeah, and they appreciate it. They're like, "Oh, this is convenient for me," Whereas us, we're just fucking annoyed by it. But yeah, so like, we're this close to like what we see in that movie, where there's big billboards like yelling your name at you and stuff. I'm sure that's going to happen in our lifetime, as much as we don't want it to.
Do you want another pair of Dockers?
Yeah.
How are those? pine and cone cereal you ate, or whatever it was called.
Yeah, I also like how like they've got like the little cartoons thing going on the cereal box. It's like technology has become so like prevalent that it's even on like throwaway things like a box, like technology that would be so considered so advanced even today, like like a moving image on a cereal box that plays a song and everything. That'll be annoying.
Apparently, that the prize for that cereal box was a bunch of stickers that make up the image of in ET when he's the iconic image when he's floating on the boat.
Oh yeah, Spielberg loves little Easter eggs like that, doesn't he?
That's his Amblin logo, I think.
That's pretty cool. But yeah, we didn't even really have time to talk about it, but I'm sure, yeah, there's a ton of detail thrown into that sort of stuff, right? Like the props and the effects and stuff. And I really appreciate it. It creates a very convincing world, which is, the main things I think that are good about it. It has a story that pulls you in, and it has a world that is very convincing, and that's what you want from a movie. You're very absorbed in what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's a very well done, futuristic movie, very potentially realistic movie. They always get the cars wrong and stuff, but everything else, I think they're getting there.
Yeah, as I said, this was a more tapered one than a lot of others, where they were like, let's try to make it realistic. It's 50 years in the future, but let's not go nuts. Let's try to realistically plan this out. There's no way to get it perfectly right, but yeah, here we are almost 18 years after the movie, and it looks pretty on track. And speaking of which, I'll also say, like, when I think of like sci-fi movies of the 2000s, it might be the best looking one. Its effects and look has held up really well.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of anything that looked as good or better until probably like Avatar, and that's 7 years later.
There's a few CGI moments in there that aren't great, but I can forgive that.
You're better at picking that out than I am. Those sort of wash over me.
When the guy says the one-eyed in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. He pulls off his bandage and he's blind.
Sure. Oh, yeah, eyes, right? Yeah.
Looks kind of.
Yeah, I get it. But I never understood that expression. I understand what it's supposed to mean, but I have to knock it down with semantics. Because if you're in the land of the blind, it wouldn't matter how many eyes you have. In fact, wouldn't you be lesser? Being blind doesn't mean having no eyes.
I guess it's
I guess they're trying to say the man with one working eye.
Right, there you go.
But they don't make that distinction, right? They just make it sound like all people are blind because they don't have eyes. Anyway, I've always had a problem with that saying, which is, a saying. It's not the movie. They did a riff on that in Dirty Work.
Mm-mm.
So remember that in that movie, Chris Farley plays a minor character who has a fake nose because his real nose got bitten off by a Saigon whore.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So then towards the end of the movie, when they're trying to like sabotage that opera and they do all that stuff, the thing he does is he gets in charge of like these skunks to release. And he just says something like, in the land of skunks, the man with like no nose is king, or something like that. Because he doesn't have a nose, he can't smell the skunks. Ah, isn't that hilarious? See, I don't pull that one apart because it's a Chris Farley moment in a Norm Macdonald movie directed by Bob Saget.
I haven't seen that movie in forever.
It seems to still come on TV fairly frequently because it hasn't been that long since I've seen at least some of it. I still like it. I saw that in theaters.
I think I own it on DVD.
I still like it. It's not like great. I wouldn't call it a classic or anything, but I like it.
Who plays the devil in that?
That's Adam Sandler. So.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a little cameo, right, where they both go to. This is some bonus content for anybody that's been watching for 3 hours. Bonus content. Remember that scene in Dirty Work where they're so desperate for money that they go to like the drug testing place and they're eating brownies, and the brownies in no way affect his friend, but every single like side effect happens to Norm. To the point that Norm is like feverish and sweating, and he starts hallucinating, and he hallucinates he's in the car with the devil as Adam Sandler, and for some reason, who is it, Webster or the other one?
Gary Coleman.
Yeah, Gary Coleman. It says, "What you talking about?" Yeah, so he's just like, what is it? He's like, we take the pie or something and we eat it together. He's like a red cartoon style devil, and he goes, "What you talking about, Satan?" And then he looks at him, and Gary Coleman laughs in a very, very disturbing way. It's a pretty good moment. So remember that. I remember that. Oh, yeah.
As Bob Saget directed that.
Yeah. I think it's the only movie he ever directed. Still love Norm. He should have more movies. It's like the only movie where he's the star, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he's in a fair amount of movies, but usually as just a supporting guy.
He had a television show I watched for a few years. One of those that was always in danger of being canceled. I think it may have even jumped networks a time or two.
I've always loved Norm. He's always had appropriate responses to whatever's going on in the world. He's one of the most self-aware people, like celebrities, I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I guess we can finish. So yeah, we both really like Minority Report. I think it's definitely one of the stronger sci-fi outings of the 2000s, and I think it's definitely one of the last really good movies that Spielberg did. And I think it's a little overlooked and forgotten sometimes. And as we said, there was a period where Tom Cruise was doing really well with movies, and this is kind of right at the beginning of that. Even though some of the movies that he did at that time I don't think are as good, but they were still successful, so full credit to him. And like you said, kind of right before he really went, at least publicly, insane. I guess he was always insane, but this was right before everyone was like, "What a nut!"
Yeah.
But he has recently sort of recovered from that in the last few years. He's kind of toned it down and acted normal, and people are sort of like, "Yeah, Tom Cruise is okay. Look at all those stunts he does."
Yeah.
See how many more action movies he can fit in before he's 60.
And he looks exactly the same now as he does in this movie.
Pretty much, yeah. He did have one big failure recently, that Mummy movie.
He's had a lot of failures. I mean, not for him, but I mean, he made a lot of money off of them. The Mummy movie, anybody could have seen that thing was going to fucking fail there, right?
Which one?
The Mummy?
Yeah.
We all knew that was not doing anything.
I even tried to watch it a couple times, and it's just not interesting.
I think I own it on Vudu. Somehow it was given to me.
Wow.
That
was weird too, because what studio was that? It was like Universal or something. They wanted to make. They're like, we're going to do a connected universe like Marvel did. This is just the start. It's like this is the start and the end.
It was Universal. Well, they did the Wolfman, and that kind of flopped.
I'm the only person in the world who liked that movie. I'm not saying it was good. I'm just saying werewolf movies are not that good to begin with. So as werewolf movies go, it's fine. And even I can recognize, yes, that has bad CGI in it. But,
I didn't think it was a bad movie. I mean, it had potential to be a much better movie with the actors it had, and
Well, it would have been nice if Del Toro hadn't sleepwalked through the whole thing.
I mean, Anthony Hopkins. I mean, the special effects were done by Rick Baker. I mean,
I probably knew that and forgot. I guess I just like that movie because so many werewolf movies are contemporary, and I don't think werewolves are like vampires. I don't think werewolves fit well into a contemporary world. But this is like a 19th century or 18th century thing, and I think the werewolf looks really good there. And I wish there were more movies like that. I'm tired of seeing werewolves taking cabs in New York City. I like them in Gothic castles and running through the forest and attacking villages and stuff. And that had a crazy scene where he's in an old style sanitarium. Remember, and he's all strapped to the chair and they're all watching him in the road. I love that. Hugo Weaving's totally underused in that movie too. They should have done more with him. He was like the cop that was after him.
Benicio. Is Benicio the main guy in that?
Yeah, he's the main guy. He's the one that gets the curse, and his father's Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, that's a hell of a gene pool.
Yeah.
Your mother was a beautiful Brazilian lady.
Yeah, I have to say, of the many, many movies we've seen where various actors play relations to each other, that's one of the odder father-son combinations we've come up with.
That'd be a fun discussion to talk about some of those.
Well, speaking of that, another discussion that I thought of that originally I thought maybe I'd suggest to the Sausage Factory guys, but now I realize they don't deserve it. Is I've always thought about, how there's a lot of movies where obviously there's characters that are there are a lot of actors that are often typecast, right? It's their thing. But sometimes there are notable movies where the whole point is kind of you have an actor that's well known for something and they're playing against type. I think it'd be interesting to talk about like the movies, like the best ones and the worst ones, like where it worked best and worked worst, like where like an actor is notably playing it against type and whether it worked or not. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Just trying to think of some movies like that. Because every once in a while you get like an actor that's really important to them to make this movie because they want to show that they're different and they can do this sort of movie, and sometimes it works and sometimes it does not. So I thought about that not too long ago.
I'm trying to think of an example where they go against type and it actually works.
Or if it's a disaster too. If it's just whatever, but if it's notably good or notably bad. Like I can't think of anything right now, but I know I was thinking about there were at least a few.
I have to think about that.
I mean, sometimes you get like action guys that want to show they can do drama.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Like Will Ferrell and Stranger Than Fiction.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But I think it works.
I actually really enjoy that movie. I really enjoy that movie. And plus it has a little quirkiness to it, so it's not like he's completely...
Right.
Which I think is the right approach, right? If you're going to do that, don't just like at least ease yourself into it. Like one of the worst examples I can think of is like a comedic actor trying to do serious, and what's weird is because he's proven in other movies he can do it. Is Jim Carrey did a movie called The Majestic? Oh my god, man, that movie's sappy and terrible. And he's just trying so hard. Like you can see, like he wants like some sort of like Oscar nomination from it. Like he's being all whimsical and stuff, and it's so bad. And he's proven in other movies he can do some decent drama, but that movie is just ugh.
I was trying to see. There's somebody that was making Minority Report was coming off The Majestic. That was 2001, right?
Yeah, it was 2001. I don't even remember who else is in that movie. Just Jim Carrey. I've mostly excised it from my memory. Expelled it. Banished it.
Okay. Frank Darabont was approached to do a draft of the screenplay, but he was busy doing The Majestic.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah.
I know I saw that earlier.
It's funny. I remember. I forgot about The Majestic. I read the same thing, that Frank Darabont was going to be involved and then wasn't, and I somehow skipped over that it was The Majestic. Not his best work either.
Did he direct that?
I think he did. He didn't direct too many movies. I think that's one he did direct. I'd double check that because I could be wrong.
I've seen it. I just know I didn't like it. I don't remember much about it.
It's not terrible. It's just,
It's not what I want. I know that.
It's like Jim Carrey trying to be all wide-eyed and whimsical and kind of...
Oscar.
It's like he's trying to be like Tom Hanks kind of thing, right? And again, he's proven that he can do...
I mean, that's a good example. I mean, one of the first movies Tom Hanks went, dramatic on, say Big or, Philadelphia or something.
Yeah, because Philadelphia is a good example because it's like a lot of people, through like the 80s and stuff, Tom Hanks was a comedic actor. And then to take such a serious role with such a serious, about a serious topic like AIDS for Philadelphia, I think a lot of people, I was too young at the time, but I think a lot of people probably doubted it. And then he did a really good job. So yeah, that's a good example of a comedic actor at the time. And then he spent a lot of the 90s doing really dramatic roles.
Which I like both. I think he's a great comedic actor. I love his comedic films.
I think he's funny. I don't really love his comedic films, but that's not a thing against him. Like, there's no problem with him. He is funny. I'm not saying he's not. Just not into those movies. Every time I try to watch The Burbs, I turn it off like 15 minutes in. And
Oh, really? You don't like The Burbs? Yeah.
No. I mean, again, I'm not trying to say I think it's terrible. I don't know. There's that whole, we talked about this before. There's like this whole like era of like mid to late 80s comedies, and none of them work for me.
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about this, about how, comedy is subjective, probably more so than any other type of film.
Yeah.
And it also, you look at some of the known as the great, comedies, a lot of films are so dated that they don't hold up, because it's so centered in the time that it was made,
Yeah, like Airplane.
That's what I was gonna say. Airplane was one of my examples.
I still enjoy Airplane, but yeah, it's super dated, and I can understand how anybody like pretty young would like not like anything about it.
We were actually talking about Spaceballs and how neither one of us likes Spaceballs.
I'm
But
okay with Spaceballs. I like Spaceballs.
but like I'm a big Star Wars guy. I always have been, and I don't like Star Wars or I don't like Spaceballs. I just think it's stupid, and I love a lot of Mel Brooks movies. Like a lot of his stuff is just amazing to me.
I agree with that. I think it's more stupid than good.
Like Young Frankenstein, like that's a great movie.
Yeah, really good. Is that the movie that has the walk its way joke?
Yeah. That's been done to death.
I know, but that joke will never. So yeah, that's a joke that can stand the test of time. I think
it's just it's hard to determine what makes a comedy that's going to be good. In 20 years. Like Coming to America. I think that's still a great comedy. I think it holds up, but
Yeah, see, that's one of the ones that like I don't have any problem with. I just don't see what's great about it the way other people do. But there's a bunch just from that era that just, like I said, I don't dislike them. I don't think like they're bad, but they don't hit me the way that I guess they hit other people. That's one of them. I'm not even really a big fan of Eddie Murphy. I know a lot of people that like is shocking, but I mean, it's not like he's not funny. I don't know.
I'm not the biggest fan of Eddie Murphy either.
No, I mean, our friend Orc is a big fan of Eddie Murphy, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but I just mean it's just never been my guy.
I'm not going to say everything he's done has been awesome or anything, but I do like a lot of stuff he's done. It's just so funny that what makes a comedy stand the test of time is kind of interesting.
Yeah,
I feel like you could show Young Frankenstein to like some hipsters, and they would probably get a laugh out of it.
I would hope so.
But it's like you look at Scary Movie 2, for example. Like there's one where they parody.
That's right of it. The Scary Movie movies are all about that exact moment in time, right? They're frozen in time.
It's like this Nike basketball commercial that's very specific. All it is you hear the sneakers squeaking, and they kind of make like a beat with that, and then it's like people bouncing a basketball. That's all it is. But if you weren't alive during that time, you wouldn't know that was a parody of that commercial at all. And like the dude's wheelchair, like he turns over and it says Firestone on the wheel.
Yeah,
you wouldn't catch that reference either. Like it's just so caught up in the moment.
That's the point of those movies, though, right? They're just about whatever pop culture is happening at the time.
Some of the stuff's really funny though, between like Chris Elliott and David Cross. Like some of their banter is still holds up. Like I like that movie.
I like 1 and 3 more, but I don't hate 2. And what's funny is I'm a huge David Cross fan, and it has David Cross with a.
I love his little ponytail mullet thing he's got going on.
He's surprisingly good in those Chipmunk movies. Those Chipmunk movies are as much garbage as you expect them to be, but he's actually trying, and he's funny. It's weird.
I didn't know he was in there.
He's in like 2 of them.
As himself, or I mean, as a human?
Yeah, as a human. He's some sort of like antagonist that's trying to get them or something. I think he's like a music executive or something. But it's funny because like most people are like, this is the Chipmunks movie. It's garbage. My career sucks. But he's just like what the fuck? I'll try, which is professional. You gotta try.
Sure. If it's not.
I mean, I haven't seen the full movies, but I've seen parts he's in. He's actually pretty funny, which doesn't surprise me. Like I said, I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's done a lot of voice work lately.
Well, that one's not voice work. He's just a real guy.
Oh, right. Yeah. Honestly, I've noticed him in a lot of things. I was like, I know that.
He does do voice work. What's funny is just recently I got back in 2004. It's funny because I was talking to you about Pearl Jam, how they'd released those live albums.
Mm-hmm.
And I never actually wound up buying one because I went insane because I was trying to get the best set list and I couldn't get one. I didn't know this until recently, but in 2004, the Bare Naked Ladies did a similar thing. They went on a tour called Play Everywhere for Everyone, and there were about 20 dates, and every single one of them was released as a live album. So not too long ago, I was trying to buy one on iTunes, and I think I made the right choice. But anyway, I bought the Hershey show. I settled on Hershey 2004. But anyway, being the weird, quirky band they are, they have, besides just like some of their songs, some say they have like ad libs and stuff, but they also had a part called like what was it called? It's called Concert Going. And I obviously it's some sort of intermission where they're off stage and some audio is playing. And this guy is going to tell the audience like some rules, but it's all jokes for like what to do when you're at a concert. And I swear it's David Cross, but I can't verify it. But it sounds a lot like him.
He's got a pretty distinct voice.
Yeah, big fan of him. But I had another one of somebody like trying to go against type and failing miserably. But we can come up with it for another time. We've done a pretty long time here, I guess, because, like I said, I had a few things I wanted to talk about. And I know we got off track, and I was blabbing about gun control or whatever. But anyway, I guess we can finish up, even though it's funny. In such a long show, I still know there's stuff about this movie that we missed, but oh well, always perfect. The Verdict is it's a really solid sci-fi movie that I would recommend. I like, even though a lot of the movies based on the works of Phillip K. Dick make a lot of changes, this is one where the changes are pretty good. Plus, it's a fairly short story, so they actually had to add a lot of stuff. It's not even like they changed things. They had to add things, and it holds up pretty well. It's a good story. So I'm a fan, for sure. But yeah, that's actually our fourth Spielberg movie, which is kind of interesting. But I mean, we spaced them out. It's not like they were all together, so,
Yeah.
And plus, he's a, big, prolific director. What are we going to do, ignore him?
Next week, Jaws.
Yeah. But I'll say this one more time. If anybody's watching, I'm not saying we don't have any ideas and we're desperate, but if anybody has any ideas or anything they want to see for a 100th episode or you think would be cool or fitting or appropriate, let us know, because we've been mulling some stuff over, but we really haven't come close to deciding what a 100th show should be. I know it's not the biggest deal in the world, but I'm just saying 100 is a fairly significant number, and all the other shows have been what they were. It'd be kind of cool to do something unique or special, so I don't know. I'll try to think about that.
Coen Brothers film do you want us to do for our 100th episode?
Yeah, let's see. Our brother, where art thou? Or what was the one you said?
The Big
Lebowski. Or I'm trying to think of the ones I hate the most.
Yeah, okay.
Because those are two of them. Because I mean,
you like Fargo, okay?
Because I like Fargo, okay. And for our very first episode was a Coen Brothers show. It was No Country for Old Men, which I don't dislike, but I think is super overrated. But yeah, there's at least one or two. I really hate Miller's Crossing. That's them, isn't it?
Yeah.
That one, it's more like I just think it's super boring. Like it doesn't make me angry the way, say, something like Big Lebowski does. Like it just bores me to death.
But, have you seen Barton Fink?
So long ago, I don't even really remember it. So I don't really even have an opinion on that one. I know it's one that like a lot of hipster people like to talk about.
What about Blood Simple?
Yeah, it's fine. It's kind of flat. I mean, it's acceptable for a first movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a plot that's worth like a whole movie, really. It's kind of a simple, straightforward plot, but they somehow get like an hour and a half out of it. It's okay. I don't have any strong opinion about Blood Simple. But crap, there's something that they're rumored to be like writing something, and people are excited, and it's some sort of franchise, like some well-known sort of franchise, and they're like rumored to be writing the next installment, but I can't think what it is. I'll have to check back on that at a future date.
Oh, no, you're talking about the remake of... It's directed by the guy that did Suspiria.
I'm not sure. All I know is that this isn't necessarily even... This is just rumor, I think. I don't think it's...
No, I don't think it's
substantiated. Well, if we're thinking about the same thing.
Shit.
All I can remember is just like some stuff on Twitter. It was some well-known franchise. I can't for the life of me think it was, and it was rumored that they would be writing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, yeah, sign me up or something. I'm like, no, but now I can't even remember what the hell it was. So.
Fuck it, I'm about to figure it out because I've seen the same thing.
Okay, we'll figure this out before we go. It must be done.
Surely it'll be on here. God Damn it. I don't know.
Frank Darabont did a show in 2013 called Mob City. How come I never heard of that?
Yeah, I've wanted to see it too.
Oh, it's John Barenthal. He's kind of cool.
Scarface.
Really? They're talking about making another remake of Scarface? How many times can they remake that thing?
They're going to remake, I mean, they're going to write it and directed by Lucha.
Oh. Well, I don't even like Scarface to begin with, so I really don't care. I don't have an opinion on that. They can do whatever they want.
Guadagnino.
Yeah. I really don't like the 1983 movie, so I don't care.
Yeah, I mean...
I like De Palma, by the way, before anybody misconstrues that. I like De Palma. It's funny, because that's kind of like the first De Palma a lot of people name, but I don't like it. But I like a lot of De Palma movies.
I totally agree with that. It's kind of like it's the least De Palma-esque film he's ever made. You know?
I also think Al Pacino's just going crazy in it, and I realize that's kind of like the role, but I don't know.
If that movie
Al Pacino has done so many better, like subtler performances, and yet everybody remembers him being all coked out and flipping out and stuff, which I don't think is hard to do. I just don't think that's hard. Like everybody, like I'm a big DiCaprio fan because I think he's a good actor, but I don't give a shit about what he did in The Wolf of Wall Street. You telling me that's hard? To act all flipped out and drugged out and drag yourself across, like that's easy. That's not even acting. That's just being ridiculous. I don't think that's hard. I don't think that takes talent. That was a walk in the park for DiCaprio, who I think is a very good actor, who can play a lot of characters, can convey a lot of emotions. I don't think there's anything hard about acting like you're on Quaaludes or whatever.
Say hello to my little friend.
Oh, by the way, what's funny is, speaking of Scorsese, and speaking of those guys, like, because of Wolf of Wall Street, Jonah Hill, that's what put him over the top. If you go by something like most like swears per minute or screen time, he's the most profane actor in movies, apparently.
I believe it.
That movie put him over the top. It put him over Samuel Jackson. It put him over Joe Pesci. You know, that's not easy to do.
I saw War Dogs finally.
Yeah, it looked okay. I guess I'll get around to it.
Oh, you haven't seen it? I thought you were the one that recommended it.
Yeah, maybe I was planning on watching it and then got distracted or something. Because, yeah, I've had the opportunity to see it.
No, I swear it was you that told me to watch it. Maybe not.
I don't know. I definitely haven't watched it, but maybe I was, like, getting ready to watch it. It's possible.
It was something I probably wouldn't have watched otherwise. But, yeah, it's not bad.
I don't know if this is still true, but I mean, I read that recently, but it made me think of something else, something I read like almost a decade ago, maybe even longer, about the movie that's considered the most profane if you go by most swearing by minute. And it's a Canadian horror film called, I think, Gutterball or something, or Gutters. Anyway, it's a horror movie set at a bowling alley. I've seen some of it. I should watch the whole thing. It's absolute trash, but it's supposed to have like the most F words per minute of any movie. Like everybody's just saying fuck every like 5 words.
Ryan Nicholson, yeah.
What's funny is at the time I was reading about that on its IMDb page, and the guy who wrote and directed it was actually like in the discussion talking to people about it because he was like really proud because somebody had mentioned that and he was really proud of the record. He's like, oh, I didn't know that.
He actually died last year in October.
Oh shit, I had no idea. Of course, then again, it's not like he's somebody I ever think about, but still, that's too bad. Not saying he was a great filmmaker, because I don't think so, but that's bad.
Brain cancer.
Oh, that's not a good way to go.
Yeah, he's pretty revered in the horror community.
I don't understand the horror community anymore, but maybe I never did, is the better answer for that. It's possible I was never part of it to begin with and never really understood it. But I was always just to the side of it. I don't know. That's a discussion for another day. We should wrap up. We've gone really long. But anyway, thanks for anybody that watched this super long episode, the 99th episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension. Luckily, time doesn't exist, so we're fine. But I am thirsty and my back is sore. So we're going to get on. But yeah, so next time up, it will be 100. And maybe it'll be super underwhelming, but we'll do it. So
stay tuned.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time. Peace.
See you next time. Big 100.